Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ballin In Da Boot. I'm your host, Jace LeJeune, and we're going to be joined by various of our high school and even college riders throughout the show, talk all things Louisiana high school football and a little bit of college football. And we're going to be joined by Allison, who's actually our Southern beat writer here for Gridiron Football, and he's also got to experience some high school football as well this week. So finally got to experience some good Louisiana high school football. We'll talk about the game that you covered this week as well. But first, Alex, what's going on? I mean, I know it was a big rivalry game between Jackson State and Southern, new quarterback, and now. So I know Southern fans were really excited for this game, and unfortunately, the performance just fell a little bit flat.
Yeah, it was a really unfortunate game from basically start to finish. It was one of the worst starts to, especially a big rivalry game that I'd seen from a team in a long time. It's I'll talk about the offense more in a second, but I think it's how the defense performed that's really the concern when we start getting into these games against conference opponents. So one thing that's really important to mention before we get really into it is that this was not a conference game. Because it's a rivalry game and because they're on separate sides of the SWAC. The Boombox Classic is not always a conference game. This year, it's not a conference game. So luckily for Southern, it's not going to count against the conference record. Still in play, doesn't hurt their chances for any of that. But what it does do is give a very concerning warning sign to what could happen in the future once we get into conference play next week, if the defense doesn't get back to that week 1, week 2 form. So the game starts, and the first 3 drives, Jackson State is just chunk play, chunk play, chunk play, chunk play, chunk play down the field, able to 10, 15 yards every single play. Field goal, touchdown, touchdown, first 3 drives. All of a sudden, by the beginning of the second quarter, Southern, who wasn't able to get anything done offensively at the beginning of the game, is just down 16-0 in what feels like a blink of an eye. And to make matters worse, after a fairly stagnant first few drives where they totaled somewhere along the lines of like 40 yards of offense in the first quarter, 3 punts, fourth punt, on that play, Xavier T-Set, who, of course, coming back from last week, was named the starter on Tuesday, was named the starter, comes in, doesn't have a great performance, and then on a third down play, he's sacked and hits the ground really hard in the middle of the second quarter, and he is slow to get up, and he doesn't return to the game. It seemed like it was some sort of lower body injury. We don't have any information on – that's just conjecture on my end. We don't have any information on the type of injury or how long he will be out or if he will be able to return next week. But he did not return to the game, and for the third straight week, we had both of the potential starting quarterbacks play significant chunks of this game. This time, it was Noah Bodden coming into in relief of starters AT set. So this game started out really poorly, down 16-0, and it really never got better. There were some yards in garbage time, and I'll talk about the Noah's performance in a minute. But the final score was 33-15, and it honestly didn't really even feel as close as that 18-point margin reflects. It was a very, very ugly game, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know both for the Tigers and the Jaguars got off to very slow starts, but obviously LSU was able to turn it around and able to get a win. Unfortunately, wasn't the case on the road as well for Southern. So, yeah, talk about Noah. I know it's been back and forth right between both quarterbacks. Obviously, this was I guess at this point, even though when Zay got out, I mean they're already down 16-0 by that time, but. So it was a performance reason why Zay ended up getting the starting job. But how did Noah look? Noah, they did end up scoring 15 points at the end. Mm-hmm. So talk about how the offense did with Noah Bodden in the game.
So Noah's performance is really interesting. It felt uncharacteristic of Noah. The kind of buzz around how Coach Graves was describing them, and from seeing them in practices, and this also reflected itself in the games going into this week, was that Noah was named the week 1 starter because he was a little bit more steady, had a little bit more experience, was a little bit more consistent running the offense, whereas Zay had all of the upside. Zay was the explosive playmaker that was going to go sling the ball, deep pass, maybe not be super accurate, maybe throw some picks, but he's going to get you those big yardage numbers, and maybe with that playmaking and more explosivity, maybe that will give the offense more success. Today, or on Saturday, this week, the roles were reversed. T-Set began the game. They were pretty stagnant. Noah comes in, and statistically speaking, and again, they were playing trailing by 20 plus points basically the whole game, so that kind of gives a little bit of perspective for the numbers. But it felt like he had the spirit of T-Set playing today.
Mm-hmm.
He passed for 352 yards and a touchdown, but paired that with 2 picks.
Yeah.
So for the first time this season, we saw Ballin actually be able to move the ball down the field through the air fairly consistently, and be able to put some points up on the board. But it came with those mistakes that you would have expected Zay T-Set to do a little bit more often. And it's a performance that, for the 3rd straight week, makes you consider who's going to be the starting quarterback going into the following game. Of course, for this game in particular, a lot of that is down to T-Set's injury status.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the final things I wrote in my article is that Ballin gave an argument. It's an interesting argument because it wasn't a perfect game, but he gave an argument, regardless of T-Set's status, who gets the shot to start next week. Who knows?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting press conference with Coach Graves. So when you go and meet with him next week, so it's going to be interesting to follow and what happens, because Zay could be good for all intents and purposes. If that's the case, then who you're going to give the edge? Because there's just been coming back and forth between both guys. But really, you kind of expected with the offense. Like you thought Zay would give this offense a little bit of a spark just because of what he was able to perform last week. But you figured defensively, at least, you can pretty much hang your hat on the defense. The defense was going to keep you in games, but it seemed like the defense also started off pretty slowly against Jackson State on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that we took a very weird path to get there, but I would say the overall offensive performance was actually fairly in character for this team going up to this point. 15 points. Kind of erratic, got some touchdown drives, had a very difficult time running the ball, like more difficult than either of the first 2 weeks. And I'll talk about that more in a second. But the offense more or less felt like what you would expect. The problem was the defense. The defense, I talked about this last week. The defense had a performance through the first 2 weeks of the season that made me feel like if Southern puts up 15 points in one of these conference games, they might be able to win an ugly game like that. 15-13, 15-10. Something like that, or lose close, 17-15, 21-15, something like that. But instead, the final score was 33-15, largely because the defense got off to a ridiculously bad start. Now, they slowly were able to play closer to what we would have expected throughout the game. Like I said, it was field goal, touchdown, those first 3 drives. After that, they only allowed 16 more points, which isn't so bad. But that start was really bad. And it takes me back to something that Coach Graves said in the press conference going into this week. He said that the key to, especially one of these really hostile road games, a big rivalry game like this, if you can weather those first 7 to 10 minutes, then you're in great shape. The margin, the home field advantage starts to lower. It starts to even out. And if you're still in the game, you're only down 3, you're only down 6, maybe you're leading. If you can take an early lead, you can take the crowd out of it. All of that's really important. And Southern just failed to do that. In a lot of ways, the crowd took over and momentum just started rolling with that home field advantage. And by the time Ballin started moving the ball down the field late in the half, it was already 23-0. And at that point, the doors practically slammed shut. The defense played better in the second half, but it just wasn't enough. It was not a very good performance. I do wonder if there is a worry about margin of error with this defense. I wonder if they worry about, they have to hold a team to 15 points, 16 points, 17 points to try to win one of these games. But the overall performance of the defense is not to the level that it was in those first 2 weeks. And if they don't return to that, it's going to be hard to see this team having significant success throughout the season.
So I'm here with Southern beat writer for Gridiron Football, Allison. You can check out his article. It's one of the first articles you'll see because it's pretty recent on our website. Go to gridironfootballusa.com. And the Southern Jaguars fall to 1-2 to start the season in the Boom Box Classic is what they call it, that rivalry between Southern and Jackson State. Final score 33-15. So before we move on and transition and talk about your high school game, moving forward, I know it was a disappointing flat performance against a team that Southern fans really want to take on, right? But moving forward, how concerned are you about the start to the season?
I would say I'm fairly concerned, honestly. I said I was very optimistic going into this past week because, week 2, it was against a Division II opponent. You can write that off. But week 1, against McNeese, a team you were not favored against going into the game on the road, that looked great. But if the defense looks against SWAC competition more like this game against Jackson State, that's really concerning. The rushing differential in this game is the big problem. This game was won and lost in the trenches. Jackson State outrushed Southern 201-29.
Cool. Huh.
That's a problem. You're not going to win. You're not going to win football games like that. And that has to be fixed. The defense has to look a lot more like the defense played against McNeese, and the thought starts to creep into your mind of, is there, was it just a week 1 offense starting slow? And is this defense that was fine, but not elite like we were hoping? Is this defense closer to reality? The one thing that I think is a silver lining that I think fans can use, the team can't say this and the team can't think like this, but as a fan or a spectator, I think it's reasonable to consider the role that the Hurricane could have played on preparations going into the game. I know that they had to move some practices. They had to, practice indoors. I don't remember if a practice had to get canceled, but it was a concern, right? Hurricane Francine came in. By the time it got to Jackson, it was a tropical depression. And so that might have had some impact. And if it turns around against Prairie View and looks a lot closer to that week 1 to week 2 performance on defense, then I think there is a lot higher ceiling on this team. But that's really the question. Are we going to get a performance in the SWAC on defense that looks like it did at the beginning of the season? Or is that game against Jackson State more indicative of what this team looks like on defense? I think that's going to be the difference between the team that competes in the SWAC, wins, 5-6 games in the SWAC and is making noise winning that Western Division, or is it a team that is more mediocre and is struggling to be above 500, for example? That is my own opinion on it.
Well, the Jaguars look to even their record next week to move to 2-2. They're going to have to go on the road to Prairie View and kick off SWAC play against Prairie View next week. And obviously, Alex will have some Southern coverage this week. And then we'll have a game recap of that as well. And, of course, we'll talk next week to see how the Jaguars, see how they respond after the loss on the road.
Weird scheduling thing. They play 2 Houston teams in the span of 3 weeks, both in Houston. This week, and then they come back home, and then 3 weeks later they go back to Houston. So that's a little bit odd. But yeah, so they go to Houston this coming week. Sorry.
No, that's all good. And Alex, you're going to make the transition to get to finally cover a high school football game as well for Gridiron Football. So your first experience, and it was a good one. These are 2 programs that are big powerhouse programs in South Louisiana. Both have talented athletic quarterbacks. We will talk about a little bit more. But LCA, man, I mean, everybody was talking about, okay, They lose Jawan Johnson, who's had the all-time record in yardage in Louisiana high school football history, but there's a reason why they won 4 state championships in a row. And Braylon Walker, their quarterback. Now I've seen him in mop-up duty last year. I was like talking to some LCA fans, like, who is this Braylon Walker? And I was like, and they were telling me that we're going to be just fine after Jawan. Like it wasn't like a worry for them, and you were able to see Braylon Walker firsthand.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this game, but we can start with Braylon Walker, absolutely, because that's the big question when you talk about, historically one of the greatest high school football players in the history of the state of Louisiana with Jawan Johnson. How do you replace that? You can't replace 100% of that. And asking him to fully walk in that shadow and fill in those shoes, impossible. But for the expectation of LCA as a program of very good quarterback play, can keep you in every game, will give you explosive plays, Braylon Walker did that. There were a couple of plays that he looked like Superman out there, genuinely. When the game was on the line in the biggest moments, he looked great. He wasn't super consistent. It's only his, I believe, second start, correct?
Yeah, second start.
Second start ever. It's his first season as starter. Not consistent, but very explosive. When a big play needed to happen, he made those big plays. It was a very fun performance to watch. I think this is a great team, and the quarterback play is more than suitable, more than good enough to compete at whatever level, however high those aspirations are. And for a program like LCA, that's going to the Superdome. This is a team that looks ready to do that. But yeah, this game, there's a lot to go through. First off, one of the things that really interested me with this game in particular was the fact that both teams were 0-1 going into the week. LCA had lost to Rummel in week 1. You mentioned that earlier. It was a really good game, really close game in the Superdome. And Carencro fell short to St. Thomas More, two of the best teams in the state that they played in week 1. But both LCA and Carencro have a lot of expectations going into the season. So neither team wants to start 0-2. These are both teams that are winning programs, winning teams that are expecting to win a lot. And so to start 0-2, there's a bit of not desperation, but just they needed this. Both teams needed this. And you saw that on the field. The final score was 38-21, which sounds, 17-point game. Actually, only a 1 point shorter margin than the Southern game that I just talked about.
Yeah.
Not every 17-point game is created equal. And this was a 17-point game that if you flip the result of 3 plays is a dogfight that goes down to the final possession.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So I was just going to ask you about, obviously LCA was able to get their points. I know Carencro, they have explosive offense. Chance Babineau is a really great athlete at quarterback. Now, the thing was a lot of people were questioning about was the quarterback situation, because I know they got a quarterback that actually played in their 8th grade Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game as the other quarterback. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that how they kind of managed that situation with Carson Gursey and Chance Babineau, and how were they just flipping back and forth, or how was that situation playing throughout the game?
So this was my opinion from what I saw. Babineau's the starter, period. Babineau's the guy. He's the best athlete on that team. He's the best player on the team. I think he was the best player on the field for either team.
Yeah.
There's something very special about that player, about Chance. He was everywhere. First off, starting quarterback. I think their leading rusher. I never got full stats on the game for Carencro, but probably also their leading rusher. He was a kicker, one of their kickers. He did kickoffs at least. Their punter, which made watching the game on 4th down very odd, because I'm like, oh, they're going to go for it. Oh, that's a pooch punt. So anyway, he's their quarterback, leading rusher, kicker, punter, kick returns and punt returns, and they had him lining up at wide receiver. So Carson Gursey had packages in the game.
Okay.
He's a young player, and they would have packages where Chance Babineau would line up at slot receiver off the ball. Gursey would be playing quarterback, and this would be 1 or 2 plays in a series, 1 or 2 plays in a drive, not entire drive. And it felt like every single time Babineau was lining up at a position other than quarterback, he was jet motioning across the field pre-snap and trying to get him in space with a play designed to get him specifically the football.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen an offense more designed around a specific player in so many unique ways than I have with Chance Babineau. He logged a reception in this game on top of being their leading passer and their leading rusher. I'm surprised they didn't have him playing safety at this point. He was everywhere, and he was electric. He was, this isn't to discredit the rest of the team, for the record. Carencro is a very good football team around him, but he's the reason that game was as competitive as it was. Yeah. His playmaking ability is what made it so competitive. I guess I'll go ahead and jump to this specific sequence, if that's okay.
Yeah. Describe how LCA was able to pull away from Carencro.
Yeah, so this game had a very interesting flow to it. It started off with special teams having a really big impact. The first score of the game was a punt return touchdown by Trey Parker. I apologize. I watched an Ole Miss game. Trey Parker kicking off with a punt return touchdown, punted by Chance Babineau. But LCA was 2 for 6 on point after attempts, and so there was this weird feeling with a missed PAT and a blocked PAT. They're up 20-7 late in the first half, and they get a kickoff. And the kicking team just has problems at LCA. There's no other way to put it. They first kickoff, a returned super long play by, I forgot the name, not Brian Amune, another one of the really good, really athletic players on Carencro. I'm terrible, but not Chance Babineau. The other kick returner lined up there deep had 2 different really deep kick returns.
Was it Brian Angel?
Brian Angel, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm terrible. Brian Angel. There's been a lot of football this weekend.
You're good.
But yeah, so Brian Angel had 2 really big kick returns, getting Carencro into LCA territory, leading 2 of their best drives in the first half. The first one went for a touchdown. That's why the score was 20-7. The second one, 4th and goal on the 3-yard line. Huge play near the end of the half, probably the last real scoring opportunity of the half, like a minute to go. The difference between 20-7 and 20-14 in this game is huge. And Chance Babineau bobbles a snap. Falls on it. LCA takes over. Actually has a trick play that almost scores a crazy touchdown at the end of the half to basically slam the door shut, make the score like 27-7.
Right.
But scored halftime's 20-7. And LCA is looking to, run away with the game, right? You're up by 2 scores. If the game gets close, those PATs become a problem. But if it doesn't, you're in great shape. Carencro gets the ball back to start the second half. 3 plays into the drive, I believe. A few plays into the drive, Chance Babineau throws a pick 6.
Okay.
Chris Hilaire actually becomes the 3rd all-time leading interceptions leader.
Yeah, he's had a lot of interceptions over his career. He's a ball magnet for LCA. So,
yeah, and he's a playmaker with it after the catch too. He gets the ball in his hands, and he is very liable to break one and send it back the other way, just as he did today. Did this week. Broke like 2 tackles, not broke the tackle, but evaded two would-be tacklers, ran it back 50 yards for a pick 6, and all of a sudden with one play, they missed the extra point. It's a 19-point game, 26-7, and okay, we see where this is going. LCA is going to pull away with this. And then Carencro realizes they need to make every drive count, and they get to a very more like hand the ball off, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Do not turn the ball over. You have to go score on this possession, or else the game is going to get out of hand. Very long drive, very slow drive. Took half the third quarter to do it, but they score a touchdown, 26-14. A few plays later, as LCA is driving, Braylon Walker, one of the problems with a quarterback that carries the ball for 14 times, like Braylon Walker did in this game, 14 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. A great stat line alongside a couple of great passing plays.
Yeah.
But Walker, one of the problems is that sometimes he's looking to make a play, and he's getting into, holding onto the ball a little bit late into the run, and he fumbles the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They lose the ball. Carencro gets the ball back. 3 plays later, Chance Babineau, 48 yards down the sideline, down the Carencro sideline for a touchdown. And just like that, it's 26-21. It's a 5-point game. Yeah. Carencro has all the momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the drive that decides the game.
Yep.
Middle of the third quarter, LCA gets the ball back, only up by 5 with no momentum left in the game. And Chance Babineau being a large part of the main reason why this game is super close.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3rd and 5. And Braylon Walker and LCA does not want to give the ball back.
No.
To the Golden Bears.
Campbell.
No.
Uh-huh.
Last thing you want to do is a 3 and out. And give the ball back to them, let them take the lead. Braylon Walker looks, finds an open man down the middle of the field for a big gain and a face mask penalty to drive the ball another 15 yards off the penalty. They're driving. Now they get a chance to put in this really important touchdown to get a 2-score lead. Later on, it was a great throw, great decision, great pass. Later on, it's 3rd and goal. And in my opinion, the most impressive play in the game. In a game with a lot of highlights. Punt returns, kick returns, pick six, everything, 50-yard bombs, everything you could ask for. Mm-hmm. This, in my opinion, was the most impressive play in the game. 3rd and goal on the 5-yard line. I think like the first or second play of the 4th quarter. Up by 5. You really don't want to have to make that decision on 4th and goal.
Right.
You don't want to give Chance Babineau and this Carencro team the ball back only down by 8 with a chance to tie the game up. And you don't want to risk not scoring on 4th down and give them the ball back, even on their own 2-yard line, for example, only down by 5 with a chance to take the lead. Not things that would be good for LCA success at all. Braylon Walker takes the ball, looks to his left. I believe it was a designed run that if he took it the way it was designed would have been tackled for a loss. Bends it back the other way. Just really great ball carrier vision. Bends it back the other way. Eludes one guy, runs it in for a touchdown. It was only a 5-yard touchdown run, but it had huge stakes in the game. They needed it in that moment, and it was a very, very impressive play. Great play by Braylon Walker. This is the play that when I'm thinking about Braylon Walker's performance in this game, that's the play I think of. He made mistakes. He wasn't super accurate. He had a fumble, all of these things. But when the cards are on the table and you need him to make a play, he made a play.
Yeah, and he's got plenty of help. Calvin Parker, Jalen Noel, the running back. I mean, they got weapons. So they're not lacking weapons, and really a great start to the season for LCA. I mean, I call the U-High Rummel game. I know they're coming off of on the losing end of that one, but Rummel is super strong. They're big up front, pretty good really good running back, stout defense, and that was a stout defense I saw on Saturday night. And for them to score 35 on that defense, yeah, LCA is going to be just fine. Just wrapping it up because I think we got about 2 or 3 more minutes.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. This makes it really good. So what did Coach Lockhart have to say pretty quickly about the win?
Oh, he was really impressed. He had he was super happy with the win. I don't remember a specific quote off the top of my head, but he was just happy with the team as a family as a whole, and their performance in that late 3rd, early 4th quarter, and just how they were able to rally because they got punched in the face. They go from being up 19 to being up by 5 basically at the snap of a finger, and they were able to respond, and they were able to be basically do what a great team does and slam the door shut when all the momentum's going against them. There's one final point I wanted to make, and I didn't get it. I wanted to get on this more, but I'll try to make it quick. Jalen Noel in the offensive line is the focal point of this team. Braylon Walker's great. Braylon Walker's a great quarterback, but he has a lot of help because Jalen Noel is a workhorse back. 26 carries for 134 yards, most of which came on the final true drive of the game. They're up by 11 early in the fourth quarter. And what do you want to do in that situation? You want to run the ball down their throats. He must have had 10 carries on that drive alone. And because of that offensive line, 6 minutes touchdown drive, end the game up 38-21. Here's the thing. In our media days with these coach interviews, I haven't watched every single coach interview, but I have done a lot of them. And the one main thing that I noticed, all these coaches love talking about, our 7-on-7 summer scrimmages. Those were great. We did all that stuff. Only one team and only one coach of the ones that we talked to, or of the ones that I've seen, mentioned this. The LCA coach, Zach Lockhart, talked about doing one-on-one scrimmages with his offensive and defensive linemen with other teams during the summer. That's the difference here. Everyone wants it. It's not that Carencro didn't want the game as much as LCA did. It's not that the Carencro offensive and defensive lines didn't go out, bust their asses, and bring everything they could in that fourth quarter. But when the chips are on the table and the game is being decided, it's that sort of practice at the end of the game in those summer scrimmages in June, in July, that decide a game like that make LCA so dangerous in the trenches. That's a team that is built from the inside out. They're great on the edges. Those wide receivers, that secondary is great. But the offensive line is the focal point of this team. The motor of the team is Jalen Noel in that run game. It is a great team. They're going to be a tough out. It says a lot about Rummel that they were able to win that game in week 1. And LCA is going to be difficult to beat for anybody they play. And they play a loaded schedule. It doesn't get easier.
No, it doesn't. I'm looking at it right now. But there's a reason why LCA went to going and playing 7 straight state championship games. They improved the 1-1. They'll go and travel to Westgate next week. Carencro, I mean, they have Chance Babineau. They're going to be in every game. I mean, I talked to Coach Corville, and he said, this is when he was a freshman, okay? He's going to his junior year. He told me, Jace, this is the best freshman I've ever coached since some guy named Kevin Falk. And you know how good he is.
Kind of good.
Yeah, pretty good career, right? So shows what kind of guy he is. Now they got to play Zachary next week. It does
not get easier for them either.
But this could be a team down the stretch. They might be a lower seed than usual, but you do not want to play this Carencro team. And just going to wrap it up with that, as both these teams are going to be fine moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't get easier for either of these teams. These are two great teams. And if you want to follow a team with a great schedule, both teams are great to look at because they're going to be playing great teams week in and week out. Yeah, there's a good chance Carencro has to go to Zachary next week. There's a good chance they start the season 0-3. And that's nothing like I'm not writing off the result of that game. They could easily go and win that game.
Right.
But there's every possibility that they start the season 0-3. And I still feel like they have the whole season ahead of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't matter. You don't want to start a season losing a bunch of games, but that's a great team. And just because you're playing some of the best teams in the state doesn't mean you can't go compete with them in November and December when you're in the playoffs. Because Carencro is going to be there. Doesn't matter if they start 0-3. They're going to be there, and they're going to be a tough out, even if they have to go on the road.
Absolutely, Alex. Great insight for both these two games. You can follow his content at gridironfootballusa.com. Great job, Alex. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, man.
Jace LeJeune from Gridiron Football. Again, we are at the Ballin In Da Boot show. This was episode 2. We're talking about week 2 of the Louisiana high school football season. And one of the big headlining games was covered by our own Darryl Felker, Louisiana high school football beat writer for Gridiron Football, and picked a pretty big one between the Catholic High Bears and the St. Thomas More Cougars. Both teams win a whole lot, and both teams also going to compete for state championships at the end of the year. So, Darryl, you saw some pretty good football on Friday. And, yeah, I mean, just talk about the atmosphere, right? Because I know you're not from really Louisiana, but just to see that type of atmosphere, because that's as big as it's really going to be during the regular season, having two programs like Catholic High and St. Thomas More meet up.
Yeah, it was a St. Thomas More home game. It was their season home opener as well, so they really packed the stands out, and their intro with the smoke and fog machines, it was
underneath the bleachers too. That's unique stuff.
Yeah, Yeah. So it was just all around. It was they had the tailgate going when I got there before the game. So it was really like a college atmosphere in the air. And Catholic, their side came very deep as well. Like their stands were full. Their student section was going crazy the whole game. So yeah, it was a really good atmosphere from both sides. And yeah, it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, St. Thomas More, they always have great quarterback play. I mean, you go back and they just kind of churn them out year in, year out. Walker Howard, who was at LSU, was a 5-star quarterback commit. Now he's actually at Ole Miss. He was a quarterback a couple years ago, and then you also have to lose Sam Altman, who won back-to-back state championships for St. Thomas More. First time any St. Thomas More quarterback's done that. Now you have a new quarterback in for St. Thomas More in Caleb Bazeron, and I know that he's going to be a really good player for St. Thomas More moving forward. But I feel like early on, Brian Broussard was our Gridiron Football Player of the Week. He had 4 interceptions against Carencro. It was going to be about the defense. Catholic High has a really good defense, a stout running game. So were you surprised going in that it was going to be more of a lower scoring game maybe than years past?
Yeah, I definitely thought with just how loaded the teams were, I thought that it was going to be a lot more high scoring, but the defenses showed that that wasn't going to be the case right out of the gate. And yeah, it was basically a shutout for the entire first half until about 30 seconds left when Catholic was finally able to get into the end zone. But yeah, throughout the first quarter, neither team was really moving the ball much, and it was turnovers or punts either way. So yeah, it was definitely a defensive game, and it
Yeah.
definitely surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, both teams have to replace their quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Altman for St. Thomas More, he was a 2-time state champion for St. Thomas More. You look at Catholic High, they're replacing probably their best quarterback in program history in Daniel Beal. I mean, he won 3 state championships in 4 years as a starter and is playing for the Raging Cajuns at quarterback. So, I mean, both teams are replacing their quarterbacks. What are your overall thoughts on how the quarterbacks played in this game, knowing that it was probably going to come down to whatever quarterback was going to limit those mistakes more?
Yeah, it definitely. I think both quarterbacks really had a good showing uh, in the circumstances that they were faced with. Because I mean, both teams had a very dominant defense. Both defenses were playing very well from the defensive front. Running wasn't really an option for either team. And then when they did drop back and try to pass, the defensive backs, as we said, Gridiron Football Player of the Week last week, Brian Broussard, he had an interception in the first quarter. So he actually had 5 interceptions over the course of 5 quarters. So yeah, it showed me, like, as soon as they came out the gates that it wasn't really gonna be too much airing it out and running the score up or shootout. It wasn't going to be a game of that kind. So, yeah.
Right. Well, good news. I mean, I did the interview with Brian Broussard for the Gridiron Football Player of the Week interview. Just talked to Brian. I know you said he got hurt in the game, but it turns out it's not that serious as I originally thought. So he's actually good, and he's going to be playing starting next week. So that's great news.
Okay, yeah. I'm very glad to hear that because when he went down, it was like, I know it hurt STM because that's kind of their defensive captain. I mean, it's not, the defense isn't just one player, but when it's a player of that magnitude, missing him out on the field, it kind of shifts things around. You kind of got to do things a little differently. So I'm happy to hear that as well.
So Catholic was actually able to get on the scoreboard first, right? I mean, their running back Jaden Miles, who a lot of people have been raving about, it's already got Division I Power 5 offers already. So from what you're able to see from him, what do you like most about this young but very talented running back that Catholic does have?
Yeah, I have him marked down as my player of the game for Catholic. He, or at least a standout player with a lot of potential, because I looked him up after the game and I saw that he was only class of 2027. And he's got a huge frame, 6'2", 203. And I mean, he he got the job done, and he got the job done for him as well. Last week he had 100+ rushing yards and 2 touchdowns to get them to win last week as well. So I'm definitely excited to see what he's gonna do especially as he develops. So yeah, so I'm really excited for him.
Man, Cal know what it is about Catholic High, but they've always had great running backs year in and year out. You go all the way back to Warwick Dunn, who played in the NFL, and then you go and recently, right? Darius Geis, who played at LSU. You had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who played at LSU and then played for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, like, no matter what, Catholic's always going to have a great running back, and it seems like J.M. Miles is going to be the next great one. And he's running behind a really good offensive line for Catholic High as well. That's going to be one of their strengths of the game. So, so it's 6-0 early on, and then that was pretty much the score at half. So that's kind of what you figured out a low scoring first half. And so what happened after that, basically, so St. Thomas More made it they were down 9-7, right? So Catholic kicked the field goal, made it 9-7, right? At that point.
Yep, they were up 9-0, and then STM finally got into the end zone. Their running back Gabe, forgive my pronunciation if it's Mochek. He punched in right down by the goal line to get them their first points, and then they came right back and actually forced the punt. And on the first or the second play of the drive, the running back, he popped another huge run. It was about right under a 50-yarder. And yeah, he ran it all the way into the end zone. So within 2 minutes, they had taken the lead of a game where they hadn't really scored. They had been able to move the ball, but they hadn't put any points up. So I definitely felt like that was a big point in the game when it happened. I felt like it was a momentum shift because, like I said, it was a home game for them, and that crowd, they were finally back into it, and they were cheering on third down, and yeah, so it kind of changed the atmosphere for them a little bit.
Yeah, so their running back, so Gabe scored 2 touchdowns. He had a long one that made it 14-9, I believe. So 14-9, St. Thomas More. And then Catholic has a chance to take the lead too, but I believe they had to settle for a field goal. And it's 14-12, and you're at that halfway point. 6 minutes left in the game, and it's like you're going down to the nitty gritty, right? It's going to come down to the final 6 minutes, and you knew, like, man, I bet you were staying on the sidelines, man. I'm watching that really a heck of a football game with the final 6 minutes.
Yeah, as soon as like you could see the course of the game, and like you said, when we got to that last 6-minute timeout break, I was like, yeah, this game is looking like it's gonna come all the way down to the wire, and that's exactly what it did. So yes, but actually the first play out of the 6-minute hydration break was when STM fumbled the ball on a handoff, and Catholic got the recovery, and it kind of that was the game to me, because 2 plays later, their quarterback, he had one of his best throws of the night, Baylor Graves.
Yeah.
He threw a 40-yard touchdown pass right over top to Amari Clayton, and he went up, and I saw on Twitter his nickname is Mr. Go Get It.
He's Mr. Go Get It.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Yep, he went up and got it, and yeah, he brought it down, and that was the final score of the game, because it had been such a defensive game so far. When they scored that touchdown, I knew it was I thought STM still definitely had a chance, but I knew it was going to be hard for them because they were moving the ball well before that 6-minute break, and first play out, they fumbled, and it kind of was a huge momentum swing back towards the other way after they had just kind of finally gotten some traction going in the game.
Yeah, they certainly did. And Mr. Go Get, Amari Clayton, he's actually one of the guys on their Gridiron Football bowl game radar, and he's actually been invited to the game, and looking forward. Hopefully, we get to see him at our bowl game at the end of the year. But he made some big plays for them to win the last game. So I know Cole Bergeron for St. Thomas More is going to be a good quarterback for him. It's just he's young, for St. Thomas More, just trying to navigate the offense. They're going to be really dangerous because Cole Bergeron is a Division I type of quarterback, just with his frame, his arm strength. Like, once they get this St. Thomas More offense, it's clicking with that defense. boy, watch out for the Cougars this year.
Yeah. I definitely think they're still going to have, like as you said. I mean, they're both teams are coming off state championship season, so I mean, I don't think there can be too much of a drop off. And like you said, he has all the tools. Like, he was super tall frame, he was mobile. Like, he got the job done with his legs a couple times, where it was like a big, actually on the last drive of the game, it was like a big 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and he actually just hiked the ball and just went right for it himself. No other play call, no other thinking about anything else. That was the play call, and he got the job done. So I was definitely pleased with what I saw from both teams. It was just a defensive battle.
So how about Catholic High? They just found a way to win their first 2 games against 2 of the best teams in the entire state. And these 2 teams that they beat, they're not used to losing that much. I mean, Destrehan in week 1 in the rain on the road. I mean, they ended their 33 game regular season winning streak for them. They had a long regular season winning streak at Destrehan. They broke that. And then also St. Thomas More had a 25 game overall winning streak going into this season after the back-to-back state championships. And to defeat those streaks by Catholic High, knowing that you're replacing your quarterback, there's some offensive weapons you have to replace, and your defense is going to be solid. But for them to defeat both those 2 teams that rarely lose on the road, not even at home, Catholic High is making a statement saying, hey, we are once again one of the most elite teams in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, I definitely think their win against Destrehan last week as well, I definitely think that momentum rolled over into this week, because when they went down those 2 quick touchdowns in the 3rd quarter, and I thought it was going to be a momentum swing, they weren't phased at all. They knew that they could handle it. They weren't really too worried about it, and they got the job done. And yeah, like you said, it was 2 huge opponents for their first 2 weeks, and they're still 2-0. So I'm very excited to see what they do for the rest of the season. They actually have ULAB as well next week, so it's no slacking up at all. So they're going to have a full season, and but it looks like they're prepared for it so far. So
yeah, they are. I mean, great start for Catholic High. They moved to 2-0. I just called U High's game actually Saturday night against for VSN Varsity Sports Now. Called their game against Rummel. They actually won the losing end of that one, 13-7. Now they got to play Catholic High. That's a really uprising, confident group after a 2-0 start. Now St. Thomas More, they fall to 1-1, but man, they got themselves another big time matchup next week. They got Acadiana, that is one of the best 5A programs as well in the state of Louisiana. So both teams, you can't make the excuse, well, they don't play anybody. That is for sure, because they play some of the best teams out there in the state of Louisiana. Now, you got a chance to have a conversation with Coach Hudson Fuller for Catholic High, the winning head coach. What were Coach Fuller's takeaways from a big win on the road over St. Thomas More?
He was overall pleased with their performance. He knew it wasn't going to be an easy game. As he said, they don't circle any games on the schedule. All their games are big games. And looking at their schedule, you can see that holds true. I mean, basically every game is at least a top. It's a top team in the state of Louisiana. So, he was pleased with their overall performance. He was really pleased with how they fought back when they went down, because he said, it's easy to, especially at an away game with an atmosphere like St. Thomas More, it's easy to kind of get down in dumps on yourself when they march down, like I said, within 2 minutes and put up 14 points and take the lead right back from you that you've been holding so strong the whole game. So he was very pleased with how his team fought back and found a way to get the win in the end.
Absolutely, Darryl. And you can actually check out the full highlights of the game. There are on our YouTube channel. Darryl upload them on our YouTube channel. They're also on Facebook. I uploaded them this morning as well. You also can check out Darryl's recap of the game at GridironFootballUSA.com. Darryl, continue with your great work, man. You're doing an excellent job, and looking forward to talk with you next week about the next game that you're covering this week.
All right. Thank you, Jace.
All right. Appreciate it, Darryl. Hello, everybody. This is Jace LeJeune from Gridiron Football once again, and I'm joined by a guy who's actually helping out, or who helps us out a whole lot, and is actually helping Coach Edwards, Coach Byron Wade, and the Istrouma Indians this year with some of their film, and that's Jacob Colombo. So, Jacob, you got a chance to, like I joked with you before we even started the little interview, that yeah, another edition of the Kyrie Paul show, right, of the Istrouma Indians. So, talk about how the Indian star player fared in their win this week over McKinley Panthers.
So they decided to experiment a little bit this week with a quarterback, and so might as well just put your best athlete at quarterback, and that's what they did for Kyrie. Even though there was minimal throwing from him, he did at the end of the game did get a passing touchdown, but I mean first drive again. They came out real sloppy on offense. They got backed up into their own like 20-yard line, and then Coach Byron Wade, he calls for a fake punt, and then Kyrie Paul takes it 80 something yards for a touchdown. And then I mean after that, defense swarmed. Defense swarmed the McKinley Panthers. Then next drive for Istrouma, Kyrie Paul again. He busted out another like an insane, just straight juke move, looking like Tavon Austin highlight in real life. Another like a 60-yard touchdown, and it's like, I mean, this kid needs to get more recognition. I believe I saw on his Twitter when I was looking at it. I think he has an offer from LA Tech.
Yeah.
If I believe so.
Yep.
But I mean, really, I mean, everything else, their offense was real sloppy. They had a whole bunch of delay games, holds. The coach that was in the booth with in the press box wasn't too very happy with the clock management.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to have like firsthand experience, be like, yeah, this is what coaches are saying without us hearing it.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, they one good thing did come from the younger quarterback, number 14 on Istrouma. He did have a really nice 30-yard pass for a big gain, a really nice back shoulder fade. I don't know if he was intending it to be a back shoulder, but it worked out. But I mean, at half it was 26-0, and then number 5, another running back. I think they're building a running back factory at Istrouma.
Yeah.
From a form, their running backs coach is a former LC running back.
Mm-hmm.
Played with my Live Oak alum Sal Palermo.
Yeah.
And then I mean, number 5, he had some really nice things. He had like a 20-yard run, real strong, lower body runner. Unlike I wouldn't say Kyrie's a low body, but number 5 is definitely more of a more stoutier type runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean, Kyrie again, the same drive, Kyrie a 20-yard run for his 4th touchdown.
Yeah.
And I think number 5 also plays defense. I could have got the number mistaken on there, but Istrouma did come up with an interception in the 3rd quarter. And then I mean after that, really McKinley really didn't do much until Istrouma put in like their 2nd and 3rd stream, a whole bunch of just their younger guys, and they finally knocked in a touchdown. But Istrouma did block their extra point attempt. So, and then it was just 2 clock for the last 6 minutes for Istrouma.
Yeah, and they just kind of cruise control to a 2-0 start for the Indians, and a great start for Istrouma as they get a 38-6 win over McKinley. Jacob Colombo, who I'm speaking with, he's pretty close to Byron Wade, Coach Sid Edwards, and the Istrouma Indians. So Jacob, moving forward, I know like they're trying to, you can't, as good as Kyrie Paul is, like you have to get more guys involved and more players involved, because there's going to be some tough teams out there next couple of games. You mentioned some guys that really stood out to you. There's some other options. They're working on more running backs in the backfield too, and getting more guys involved in the offense was always a positive sign. So next week, I mean, you were able to kind of cruise your way to some wins, but you got a pretty tough district foe coming up in St. Michael, and St. Michael's coming off a very impressive win over Tara. Almost, I called games for Episcopal and was able to call their game against St. Michael, and Episcopal struggled in that game, and St. Michael almost had a chance to win the football game at the end, but threw an interception. So what's been kind of the message really from this coaching staff to these players, like, hey, next week you better get ready, or St. Michael could trip you up.
I mean, they're a real big message. Like you saw it in the second quarter with Kyrie. He really didn't play this like the second half of the second quarter because he was cramping up, and that was like they were getting onto the whole team for not being hydrated because a whole bunch of people were just on the field just cramping up. It's like at some point you just got to keep staying hydrated, and I think, but they were like after this St. Michael's team, if we can knock them down. We have a pretty nice sailing. I think they do have a little bit of competition with. Let me pull up the schedule real quick. Not it's after Tara they play.
After Tara, yeah. So I know in their district, Plaquemine is going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, they week 5 they go all the way to New Orleans to play Landry Walker, which I think is going to be a pretty tough challenge. I think also driving that long, you might get a little bit in that like feel of just being stuck in that bus for so long.
Yeah, right.
Which I think is the only thing that sucks about having like that one like long drive game, because I believe everything else is in the Baton Rouge area, so everything's just short bus drives. And I think Broadmoor might give them a challenge at home, but luckily, I think their big opponents are all at home besides West Feliciana.
Yeah. I'm just kind of putting up the schedule as well for Istrouma because they got some expectations this year with Coach Edwards, and I know he's been kind of managing not only the team, but he's also running for mayor, which is very interesting as well. Dynamic of him, for mayor and coaching the team. But Istrouma has a chance to have one of their. They brought football back a couple years ago after a couple years of not having football, and they brought it back, and it looks like hiring Sid Edwards. That was such big for this program. Get back on track, but yeah, looking at their schedule, I mean, you're looking at it moving ahead. They have St. Michael, which is going to be a tough one, but you got winnable games down the stretch. I mean, Landry Walker is going to be tough because you got to make that travel. That will be a tough game.
Yeah, I think Landry Walker also might have a little confusion offensively because I believe that's when their quarterback that they had transferred to Istrouma. I think that's his first week back. So I mean, I think we might see a more dynamic offense instead of just it being the Kyrie Paul show. So I think there might be a little bit of confusion with that because it's just mostly just been Kyrie Paul so far. But we'll see the closer we get to that time to see if we start making they start making some more adjustments offensively.
Right, and other guys will step up. They got some good athletes at Istrouma, and like you mentioned, like Istruma's been known for the running backs. Obviously, you go back a long time ago when Istrouma Billy Cannon, right? And more recently, Le'Veon Moss, who's a starring running back at Texas A&M, was at Istrouma, so he played football at Istrouma. So they've always got talented athletes. Kyrie Paul seems like he's going to be the next guy. But down the stretch, late in the season, I think that late season stretch is going to be interesting when they have to play Plaquemine, which could be for a district title. I mean, that could be a game that could be for district.
I think West Feliciana as well.
West Feliciana as well is going to be tough. So that last couple of games, Jacob, is going to be interesting to watch.
I mean, I don't know. I believe it's number 6 on Istruma's defense. Mm-hmm. He's built like he could play college. I think he's around like 6'2", very lean. He plays safety, even though I think he should be playing closer to that line, using his length there. But I mean, minus for that, I mean, Istruma's just been dominant on both sides of the ball the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I know I think Dion Shavers is who you're talking about, number 6. And I know you mentioned number 5, so Justin Williams are 2 guys that that you mentioned for the Indians as key players. And it's going to be interesting, Jacob, intriguing to see how does this team like overcome some adversity. Or maybe it's like giving up a lead, or like they're not just like cruising their way to a win, and there's some adversity in the game. I know Coach Edwards is looking forward to seeing how this team kind of responds with some adversity going their way.
Yeah, since I'm slightly a part of the team, I might have to go buy them a jar of pickles to keep on the sideline so they don't cramp, or just buy some bananas for them.
Oh, bananas is key. Early in the season, I mean, you got the hydration timeouts like in August and September. You're going to see a lot of those hydration timeouts, and it's going to be key to make sure these guys are not cramping. So because you definitely get that a lot throughout the season.
I mean, I did feel like Friday though. It was a pretty cool afternoon, so it wasn't super hot, but I think it was just that because the first week was just rainy and like decently cold, so you're not excruciating sweat. So I think now this week showed that we need to start taking care of hydration and everything.
Absolutely, Jacob. Any final thoughts before we wrap up about the Indians, about their 2-0 start in this upcoming week, which should be a big one when we talk about next week?
I think I'm gonna pull a page out of Coach O's book. Go Indians.
There we go. Nice and simple. Appreciate Jacob, and we'll catch up next week and see how the Indians are doing.
All right.
Hello, everybody. This is Jace LeJeune from Gridiron Football, host of our show that we do weekly at the beginning of each week, recapping the previous season, previous week, Louisiana high school football, Louisiana college football, and we are joined with a new face here for our Gridiron Football staff, and that's Deven Johnson. We're going to introduce Deven to our Gridiron Football audience, and Deven's going to be covering a lot of high school football, mostly in the New Orleans area for us, and then big news as well. We will talk a little bit about Tulane, but Deven's also going to be our beat writer as well for the Tulane Green Wave. So, Deven, welcome aboard the Gridiron Football family.
Thank you, Jason. I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate it, and I've had fun.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the first game that you covered for Gridiron Football, and that was a good one to pick between the Mandeville Skippers and the Madison Prep Chargers. First of all, I mean, Mandeville, they have a lot of high expectations. I saw them in their scrimmage. They looked really good. They're led by Duke commit Nate Shepard. They made it all the way to the semifinals. I don't think a lot of people were really expecting them to make that type of Cinderella run last year under Craig Jones, who did a lot of winning at Lakeshore before going to Mandeville. But they played a really athletic and very talented Madison Prep football team that can pretty much hang around with a lot of teams across the state. And it was, if you like the offense, based on the final score, it was a very entertaining one to watch. So, Deven, just kind of break it down for us on what kind of exciting game it was between the Skippers and the Chargers.
Yeah, so early on, the final score is no indicator of the game that this truly was. Early on, this game was all Mandeville for sure. They came out swinging. I want to say on their first drive, they scored within maybe 5 to 6 plays between running with Nate Shepard, Ben Hendricks. He completed a long pass over the middle, and they ended the drive with Shepard. Mandeville just played well. Both sides of the ball, I felt they were in control. They were able to recover a fumble. Madison Prep, they recovered a fumble in their own end zone from Madison Prep. And the next drive went right back to Shepard. They went up 14-0. They ended the first half, up 31-6. It was a complete rout. And then the second half, Madison Prep just woke up. I definitely would give credit to their quarterback, Kylan Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tylen. Tylen.
Tylen, my bad. I'm sorry, Tylen Johnson. There were a lot of passes that had his receivers, probably made a better play on the ball. The kid probably would have had 500 yards in the air. He finished with 409 yards on 21 for 33 passing, and it was just a great game. Madison Prep, they showed a lot of resilience, and it was definitely a standout game for Shepard, Nate Shepard, for sure.
Yeah, and this year, Deven, is such a, and I talked about a whole lot, and I've been covering it for a while, but I don't remember a year full of just as many. I mean, there's always been years where it's top heavy in the state at the position, the running back position, but just the depth at the running back position is just ridiculous. Probably
Yeah.
any other year, Nate would probably be the number one or number two running back in the state, but this year, I mean, it's just with so many great running backs, you forget about him. But he's a Duke commit. He's a Power Four commit. You were able to see him in person. How special is Nate Shepherd? And I guess like if you do you have a comparison to I guess a more famous NFL back? If you do, does he remind you about anybody? And just was it like seeing him in person?
Man, seeing him in person was definitely exciting. It was my first time getting eyes on him. Um, the first thing that I would say that stands out to me is his physicality. I wouldn't say he's the biggest guy. He's a well-built running back. But he kind of reminds me of like and this may seem extreme, but in terms of his inside outside versatility, he's kind of like a LaDainian Tomlinson kind of guy,
Okay.
like
Okay.
5'10", kind of in that mid 200s. Probably about 200. Well, not he might be about like 185, but he has a good build. But his ability to run through tackles really impressed me, and he also had a couple runs where he just straight up outran people. He had a 70-yard touchdown run where he actually started off inside, juked the guy, ran around the field, snaked back. It was, he's able to do it all, and he also was able to be effective in the passing game as well. So I think he's very versatile, and I was extremely impressed. I think he's very talented.
Yeah, I mean, saw him in the scrimmage, and like he has a little bit of everything. Like you think of him as like being that home run hitter, which he is. He can break off the big run, but there was a play right in front of me. He trucked the guy.
Yeah,
So it shows you that he's got some power to him
he
as
has some
well.
power.
Yeah, so he's got all. I mean, he caught a touchdown, like you said. Had 6 touchdowns. One of them was a receiving touchdown. So this is a guy that can do it all. And I know the Blue Devils got themselves a big time steal, but it's not just a Nate Shepherd show. I mean, they have a lot of really good players around him. You mentioned Hendricks is an efficient quarterback for him and makes a lot of plays for him. They got a really good secondary. I think their secondary is one of the best out there in South Louisiana as well, and that's the reason why we're so good. The backup running back Isaac Bayhams would be a starter pretty much almost anywhere else if it wasn't for having Nate Shepherd from him. So, what do you think about this Mandeville team as a whole, and what do you think about their chances of making another big time run?
Yeah, I definitely think they have a pretty good shot. Outside of Shepard, the quarterback Ben Hendricks, he was definitely impressive. Just watching him, I saw some things that were pretty impressive for a junior. He was able to evade some sacks, keep his eyes downfield. He was pretty accurate with his delivery. He had some strikes over the middle where he threw the ball, with velocity. And Isaiah Bayham is a pretty good receiver. Their receivers are also physical. They don't mind, running over the middle, and they broke a few tackles. So, as well as their line, I feel like their line was playing pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Helping Nate Shepherd, pushing the pile forward and finishing blocks. So, I feel like they have the mindset and the tenacity of a team that wants to go far.
Yeah, and looking at Madison Prep, right? I mean, Madison Prep was, I believe they started the season 0-2.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but they played two tough opponents to really start the season. Had a tough jamboree as well. They're going to be in the mix at the end. You kind of ignore the record at this point because of the teams that they're really playing. But if you're Coach Landry Williams and your coach and the rest of the coaching staff, I mean, it was as bad of a first half you can pretty much play.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a 9-point game at the end because you mentioned Deven Johnson and the athletes that Madison Prep does have. What did you like the most about what you saw from just, I guess, the resiliency you saw from the Chargers on Friday?
First and foremost, I really would have to give I would have to give a shout out to their quarterback, Deven Johnson. I feel like from what I saw from him, he was a leader, staying composed, He delivered a lot of great throws. They have some receivers that have great speed. They Keon Robinson.
Mhm.
He caught a few passes where he was able to break off and get behind the defense. Um, they're Tylen, he also was able to dodge a lot of sacks, and they weren't out of it. And I think that was the most surprising thing. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, going into halftime, I'm like, wow, this game might be over, but these dudes scored what was it? I want to say 28 or 29 points in the third quarter alone. It was very impressive. And in the fourth quarter they kept that up. So I was impressed overall by their ability to keep fighting, and just their fight, because it's not easy, being away, being down, having the chips against you, and coming out with an answer and almost, making it a game and tying the game up. So I'm very impressed with that.
Yeah, and Mandeville, 2-0 start. They're hungry. I talked to Nate after the jamboree,
Yeah,
and they said that they're hungry. I mean, they were the semifinal team. They're going to try to prove people. Like, last year was no fluke. Like, we're
right.
that good, and we'll be back for another deep run. And now they'll try to go to 3-0 next week. They'll have Carver next week. Meanwhile, Madison Prep trying to get off the schneid, right? But it doesn't get any easier. They're going to have to face Southside, led by Jess Curtis, new head football coach. There's a lot of potential with that Southside program. Now they have to make the travel to Southside. I mean, if they follow that and they lose and they fall to 0-3, don't write off Madison Prep just because of the record.
No, definitely. I feel like they the cleanups that they have to make are pretty simple. Obviously Nate Shepherd is a special player. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think even Ben Hendricks, he's a great quarterback. Mandeville has a great program for sure, but you know, some of these, to me, this game came down to the team that made less mistakes. And if we're being honest, Madison Prep had two key turnovers that were both in Mandeville's territory. They had a fumble on, I want to say it was within the 20-yard line, unforced error. Just a botched handoff. Mandeville recovered it, and then their second fumble of the game, high snap, Tylen Johnson was unable to recover it. And literally the ensuing play, Shepard broke off a 70-yard run. So, little things like that, you clean those things up, you play a little bit more efficiently. This is a team that could compete. They showed that in the second half. So I think it's just about doing it for all four quarters. And just reeling in some more catches. Tylen Johnson was 21 of 33 for 409 yards. They had a few deep balls that had his receivers made a clean catch. He could have easily, been well into the 500s. So, it's just about cleaning up some errors, some concentration plays, and they definitely can rebound for their first win.
So big win for Mandeville, a good, really statement win for the Skippers, getting that 52-43 win over Madison Prep. Now let's look ahead. Let's talk about your new assignment as well, being the Tulane Green Wave beat writer for Gridiron Football. We're really excited about that for you joining us, Deven.
Thank you.
Now, Deven, I know you got a chance to watch a little bit of the game against Oklahoma, and Tulane has look, even though there were two losses,
Mhm.
I know there's no such thing as like minor wins or like all this, like not having to win on the scoreboard. But in the end, I mean, Tulane played pretty well against an SEC ranked opponent in Oklahoma and played pretty well the week before against Kansas State. Had a chance to really beat Kansas State, and you see what kind of team Kansas State's looking right now. So right now, I mean, Tulane's looking pretty decent, even though they are 1-2 right now.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's crazy because I actually was at the Kansas State game, and it was my first time, visually seeing Tulane, and I have to say that this is a team that looks like they can actually compete with some of the better teams in the country. They are pretty diverse in their play calling. They have a running back, Hughes,
Yeah.
who He's pretty physical. He's he's able to run pretty well in between the tackles, and I have to give a lot of credit to quarterback Darian Mensah. This guy very poised. He's gone against two top 20 ranked teams in back-to-back weeks. He's delivered some big throws, and he's just been composed. In the Kansas State game, unfortunately, he had a big fumble that was returned for a touchdown. And ultimately, he threw the pick. He tried to fit it in between the seams to win the game, and he threw a pick. But had it not been for an unfortunate OPI, perhaps things would have been different against Kansas State. But as far as Oklahoma, again, I felt like Tulane showed great resilience. These guys were in Norman. They were down 21-0 or 20. I'm 21-0. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. 21-6, 21-6 in the first half, and in the second half, they were able to get it within 5. And again, hey, had maybe some passes gone a certain way, this game could have been different. The defense, they stepped up when needed to. They got a very timely pick six. So Tulane definitely has the fight in them, and going having your first road game as a redshirt freshman be against a place like Oklahoma, that's no easy task. So I was very impressed with Darian Mensah, and I feel like the close losses should be more of a confidence booster than anything. It's a lot of things that they can learn, and I think that they showed that they belong.
Yeah, moral victories as well is the word I was looking for, right? I mean, moral victories, you don't want all moral victories a lot of times, but if there was a moral victory, it was them hanging tough against the Sooners. But I know Jackson, Arnold, and Oklahoma proved to be too much in the end for the Green Wave. But I know Oklahoma doesn't want to play Tulane again because a couple of years ago, Tulane also had a chance to really upset them at Oklahoma a couple of years ago. So yeah, I know the Sooners don't want to play Tulane anytime soon. But still, I mean, good, decent start, knowing that you're going to play those two teams anyway for the John Summerall era, and that was kind of the question about that transition from Willie Fritz to John Summerall, and I thought it was a great hire by Tulane, and I think that Coach Summerall is going to get this train rolling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just watching like some of the press conferences, I like the attitude of the team. I can tell that, they're committed, they're bought in, and they believe in themselves. They're not just small school Tulane. They're a competent NCAA team, and they believe that they can achieve success. So, um, again, I agree with you. These two losses were definitely moral losses, but it's there's a lot of things that they can improve on. I think this team has great potential. They're still pretty young, so yeah, I like what I've seen from Tulane, thus far this season.
Absolutely, and Devin's going to get you caught up on the Green Wave the rest of the season. So make sure to follow his work at GridironFootballUSA.com. Welcome aboard, Devin. Looking forward to having you, and it's going to be fun to see what your thoughts and your coverage on the Green Wave the rest of the way.
All right, no, I appreciate it, Jason. It's been fun so far. I can't wait. Thank you.
All right, Devin, sounds good. We'll talk next week on the Ballin In Da Boot.
All righty, see you next week.
Hello, everyone, and we have another segment of Ballin In Da Boot, and we are joined by one of our beat writers or reporters, Portillo. Carter, always a pleasure talking with you here on the Ballin In Da Boot, and man, you might have actually picked the best game of the week. I was following it. I was trying to cover LSU and following your game as well. I'm like, man, like there's going to be some heart attacks between both these two games and how it ended. But Carter, I mean, I know it was a lot to break down, but what a wild one it was between Brother Martin and St. Paul's.
Absolutely, Jace. Again, thanks for having me on this week. St. Paul's lost a tough one to Brother Martin. Both great teams, and both really showed up on a very hot Saturday afternoon in Louisiana.
Yeah, and that was a wrinkle too as well because of Hurricane Francine and kind of moving the schedule a little bit. I had to call a game for VSN on Friday and on Saturday because U High moved their game this Saturday. They played Rummel on Saturday evening as well after the LSU game. So a lot of good football on Saturday, and it seemed like this was a game where it was really good quarterback play. I mean, Brennan Kime from St. Paul's, Seth Daysett from Brother Martin. I feel like it sounded like it was like a duel between the both of them. Just what you thought, just offensively, from both the Crusaders and the Wolves.
That's exactly what it was, Jace. It was a duel of quarterbacks and receiving cores. St. Paul they tried to keep their running game going. As you know, they had a big loss with Cody Corrales not being in attendance this game.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what the injury is, but it looks like a high ankle sprain from the boot that he has on.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
so I was not able to speak with the coach about how long that Cody will be out, but he was, in good spirits suiting up on the sideline, but it's always tough when you're missing a game. I'll tell you what, number 13, Troy Willis did a great job standing in for him as somebody who didn't get that much playing time. Obviously, when you have a star like Cody Corrales in there, you're reluctant to take him out, but Troy Willis stepped up and did a good job.
It was actually Brother Martin that really struck first in this game. I mean, they went up, 17-3, and it sounded like that. Hey, this is going to be an easy one for Brother Martin, but it turned out not to be the case.
That's correct. Yeah, Seth Desert, he hit Easton Royal, wide receiver number 3, super athlete. He also had some strikes to Rex LeBlanc. And their running back, Trayshawn Ware, they used him out of the backfield as well with some hard-nosed running that he was doing in general. But they struck first and then again. And then St. Paul's was able to put up a field goal. That's another thing I kind of wanted to highlight was the play of Drew Talley. Very often the kickers or punt team, they kind of get overlooked, but Drew Talley was on, and he put both of their first scores up, and then later he hit a 38-yard field goal, which was very pivotal in the game.
Yeah, it turned out to be the case. You talk about Easton Royal. I mean, he's one of the most underrated receivers out there in the state. 6 catches, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So that connection with Seth and Easton was turned out to be really good. But how did St. Paul's? How were they able to call their way back into this one?
They came out the second half and just struck first and then didn't let up. They kept on, again, just kind of mowing down the Brother Martin defensive line. They have some studs there as well. They have number 99, Nathan Malik. This guy squats almost 600 pounds, and he looks the part of a defensive lineman, maybe even a nose guard, from the old school. They have Chase Chesser. This guy is listed at 6'4", 6'5", and he's every bit of that and looks the part of a LSU defensive lineman. So it took a lot for them to get wore down. As you know, neither team slacks off on conditioning, but that heat was relentless. And that continuous pummeling rushing attack combined with some quick strikes for St. Paul's to both to Brendan Villa, Stone Celestin, and even Dan Hardy, who is a backup quarterback getting in on the action. There was a trick play late in the game as St. Paul's was driving down, trying to come away with a go-ahead score, where they did a flea flicker from Troy Willis to Dan Hardy, and then a full pass out to Brendan Kime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Brendan Kime is obviously a guy. We're going to look at the bowl game, talk about Stone. Stone is going to play in our Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, so a lot of talent right there. So, yeah, made it 17. They clawed their way back. I mean, I know it was 17-15, but Brother Martin struck again, made it 24-15. We kind of got back and forth. And then the fourth quarter happened, and it was just back and forth between both teams.
It was, yeah, absolutely. Some really key play on defense from Brother Martin was number 9, Camden Burris. He's a senior, had 2 interceptions, which really, I think, puts him in top of the state, at least tied for top of the state with INTs this year, just those 2 alone. And not to mention Carter Cambry from St. Paul's, he had an interception as well. So good pivotal play on defense for both teams. Kind of, the from the moment we hit the second half, St. Paul's had momentum, and then all of a sudden there was no momentum. It seemed like all the air got sucked out of the stadium. It was just hot. Guys were going down with cramps. I literally saw a trainer on Brother Martin's side run to the concession stand, buy one of those bags of pickles, open it up, and start pouring it, giving the players some pickle juice because guys were going down left and right.
Yeah, and that's always an issue, Carter, at this point of the year when you're in August, September. That's why the first part of the season you have these hydration timeouts per quarter, so that that's always going to be an issue. And sometimes that it really depends on the games with who's the healthiest at that part of the game, because you're dealing with all these type of injuries, right? Cramps and stuff that has to do with hydration. So that's going to be very key as well. So we go second half back and forth again. I know it was 28-24. St. Paul's was able to get a couple runs. Brennan Kahn got a touchdown run. You talked about it. Chase Ravane was able to get a touchdown run to get the lead. But, man, what about the drive from Brother Martin just the last second? I mean, talk about final seconds and able to win it pretty much at the gun. Brother Martin, that connection, Dazette and Royal, struck again, and that proved to be the difference at the gun.
Correct. Yeah, he did. Seth Dazette went to Easton Royal, right? And I want to highlight Easton Royal runs a 4.5 40 and has a 36-inch vertical. Pretty impressive numbers. I think that contributes highly to his success on the field. But so he hit Easton Royal, and then he threw a quick strike to Rowan Lipscomb, and then right back again to Royal. And then Royal was not giving it up all the way in for the touchdown with less than 6 seconds left on the clock.
Amazing. I mean, what a thrower. I mean, I had a conversation with Grant when we were talking about this game and previewing this game. It shows you, like, this isn't technically a Catholic League district game, but it feels like a Catholic League district game with both these two teams. He actually got it right. I got it wrong. He said that Brother Martin was going to win. I actually picked St. Paul's to win. So it shows you what kind of flip them coin match it really was, and Brother Martin was able to find a way to win it.
Absolutely. I spoke with Coach Bonice after the game, and he was saying that this is one of his valued team, or I should say non-district matchups that they have each year and try to keep going. But he's also saying that at some point in time that might run out, because the St. Paul's might end up they might see St. Paul's later in the year in postseason play. So he's very, very grateful for the matchup that they have and this fight that they continue to bring to each other's doorstep.
Yeah, for sure. And St. Paul's actually outgained Brother Martin. I'm looking kind of the final numbers: 434 yards to 352 yards. Seth Dazette, 299, 3 touchdowns, INT. We already talked about the receiving stats for Easton Royal. And then you talk about, Troy Willis able to step up, obviously, 95 yards, a touchdown, just a lot of really good plays, just all over the place. And, thrilling win for Brother Martin. And, this is a game that I wouldn't say must win, but knowing the type of Catholic League schedule they got, you'll take them any way you can get them. And I know that's a huge win for Coach Bonice and Brother Martin, because it's just tough week in and week out in that Catholic League. But you look at St. Paul's, man, Coach Sears and that group, they played really well, fought their way back. Must be disheartening for them to lose in the last second fashion like they did.
It was, absolutely. You could see it on the players' faces. But you know what? I was really proud. I heard the kind of the post-game wrap-up as he's talking to his players at the 50-yard line. And Coach Sears just explained to them, like, he was extremely happy with their effort, and that this is an important teaching moment. How to get back on the right side of things, how to get your mindset back on track, and get back to business after a loss, and especially a loss that was kind of emotionally charged, right? With a big opponent, the one that you see every year. You're fighting through some adversity, being in the heat. You come back after a big deficit, and then it's still, you still lose. That stings even more so So again, he was just explaining to the players, as the smart old ball coach knows how to do, and get them back on track and letting them know, hey, might have yelled at you during the game, but we're all one, all a wolf pack, right? Together there. So that they look to get back on track against De La Salle. And I think that they're not going to have too much trouble doing that. Again, no disrespect to De La Salle, but they're not having quite the year that they wanted to either. So a good, I guess, momentum gainer for St. Paul's potentially. Anything can happen. And then next week, Brother Martin travels to the Legacy School of Sports Sciences. That's a tough one to say.
Yeah.
In Spring, Texas, just north of Houston.
Yeah, Brother Martin's going to try to. I mean, especially when a game like that, that group has to be really confident coming off a high. They start off a really good way to start the season for Coach Bonise and the Crusaders, 2-0, and like you mentioned, they're making that trip over to Texas to see what they can do over state lines. Meanwhile, St. Paul's, they did win their first game, being Live Oak, and Brent Kahn was actually one of our Player of the Week finalists for his performance. He had more touchdown passes than incompletions. And this one, I mean, they fall to 1-1. I actually joked. I actually talked to Brennan's dad, Chad. So he was kind of conflicted with this because he actually graduated from Brother Martin and watching his son playing quarterback for St. Paul. So you can imagine how conflicted he was with this game.
Yeah, that's tough to do. Those both teams have such a rabid fan base. It was great to watch all the fans that came out, brave the heat, sat there cheering on the teams. You could see the student sections were just soaking wet. They were amped up, and the bands were live. They were playing really well. And again, that's not easy when you're in a band uniform in that 95, 96 degree heat with zero shade out there at the stadium.
Yeah, definitely. But Carter picked a great game, very entertaining one. We definitely had your highlights from the game. They're playing while we're talking about this game. So a lot to unpack there. I knew that was going to be a game like, man, we can spend a lot of time on and talk about we did there. And Carter continued to keep up the great work. You did a great job for us, and we appreciate all the hard work. And we're looking forward to catching up next week and talking about next week. I know hopefully we get a normal week because the first 2 weeks have been everything but normal. And yeah, good job of adjusting to what's been a crazy week this week.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to be on here and highlight two great teams going at it.
All right. Sounds good, Carter. Well, we'll talk next week on Ballin In Da Boot. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting segment of Ballin In Da Boot. And we're joined, as always, week in, week out, talking Louisiana high school football, giving us a great outlook on the entire scope of the state. And that is Grant Chachere of Crescent City Sports and River Sports Media. Grant, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much, man. Just a very busy weekend, of course. A lot of changes, of course, because of Hurricane Francine, and at least we didn't get too much damage to South Louisiana, but some areas were affected more than others, including the river parishes, which is why a lot of those games had to be canceled. But we were still able to get football out of it, thank God, because the last time we had a hurricane in South Louisiana, there's at least 3 or 4 weeks of games that were canceled. So
yeah,
so at least there. But hey, and some games were being played on Saturday, some games were being played on Sunday. It's all good. I mean, as long as we got to see football, and I'm pretty sure that all the coaches were glad to play football, and also the kids especially. We're really excited that they're able to still play that weekend.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you're all right, Grant. Glad that everybody out there. Hopefully, everybody made it okay through the hurricane, and we went through it pretty all right. So we're glad about that. Hopefully, everybody was able to go through it, and we're fortunate to have football. Actually, we have had football from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm just getting report scores still filing in here on Sunday as we're recording this, Grant. But yeah, it was a weird week, right? I mean, we covered games on Friday, we covered games on Saturday, so a lot going on. We're going to talk about about 5 or 6 games that really stood out to you. Now, there's more, but I know we talked about it with some of our other beat writers here at Gridiron Football. And first, I mean, the biggest game on this list that we want to talk about is Calvary and Neville. I mean, the big news earlier this week was that both teams pretty much had to cancel their previous games. I know Calvary was going to play Westgate. That ended up being canceled. And then Neville as well. They were supposed to play Southside. That game got canceled. And it's like, hey, we're pretty good. Both of us are pretty good. Why don't we just play each other? And it turned out to be the case and turned out to be a great matchup in North Louisiana. But this game, Grant, I mean, it was more about, hey, we should be talking more about Neville than what we've really been talking about them.
Oh yeah, I mean Neville. I mean, crazy thing is, if you look at the stat sheet, it just remove the final score. Just look at the stat sheet. Like Calvary outgained Neville by like 100, 200 yards. Like Abram Wardell went off again for 376 yards and 6 touchdowns. Colby Thomas had 6 catches for 242 yards and 4 touchdowns. And he also threw a 31-yard pass. Caleb Tucker had 8 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown. So you would really think that, based off the stat sheet, Calvary must have beat Neville by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Actually, that was not the case. I mean, Neville ran the ball pretty well. They ran for over 200, 250 yards. Parker Robinson also had another great game as well, throwing for 148 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, and he also ran in the end zone with 2 rushing touchdowns as well. So it's another very impressive performance by him. And Neville's really a team that we all knew they were good, but it just seems like they're just much better than they were last year. I mean, they've had back-to-back 2 huge wins over big-time opponents at Mandeville, who a lot of people are very high on this year for good reason. And then, of course, Calvary Baptist, who's won, I believe, like 15 or 16 straight games, 16 straight games, and are a defending state champion in Division III Select. So it's a huge win for the Tigers. And it's a team that, I'm really excited to see as the year goes on, because I know last year, of course, we mentioned this before, that they really didn't end last season on the best of terms, given their upset loss to Central in the second round. So they're really trying to make another push for a state title game, which I believe they haven't appeared in over 10 years. I mean, it's been a while since the Tigers have been back to the Dome. So it's a huge win for Neville and the Neville and, of course, Coach Collins, who's in his first year as the head coach over there.
Yeah, I mean, for years, Grant, you can pretty much pencil in an end the card Neville matchup in the Superdome. I mean, it was like
or in the semis.
Or semi.
They always thought,
right. You just pencil that in for a deep playoff matchup, and they're just so balanced. I mean, they got a great defense. Jalen Nichols went off at 149 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns for Neville, and really, even though it's one of those win-win situations, in my opinion, because even though it results in a loss for Calvary, right, I still think really highly of this Calvary Baptist team as probably just as good or even better than last year's. And to go up against one of the top big school programs and hang right there with Neville, that really says a lot to me about Calvary and their ability to hang in with those bigger teams with more depth.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, last year, they beat the crap out of Captain Shreve 61-27, and Captain Shreve was the number 2 seed in the Division I Select playoffs last year. I mean, they got upset in the second round as well, like Neville did last year. But that just shows you how talented this Calvary team is, and also their depth. And really, I mean, I know we had to kind of switch. I know we had a show previewing this weekend, but they all got scrapped because of the hurricane, and a lot of the matches that we talked about were canceled or rescheduled or blah blah blah. But if we did the preview show, I would probably have picked Calvary over Neville. Not because I don't think that highly of Neville, it's just because I think Calvary's just that great. I mean, they put up 500 yards of total offense against that defense. I mean, that defense is rugged. I mean, Neville is always going to have a good defense. I mean, a lot of their best players are on the defensive side of the ball. Mike Collins is the defensive head coach because he was the defensive coordinator the last few years over there.
Right.
So I would have picked Neville, but I would pick Calvary Baptist. despite that. But I think that just shows you that Neville's offense can compete with an offense like Calvary, which is much needed. I mean, Calvary outgained, like I said,
they outgained them
before. They outgained them.
Yeah.
So I mean, that says a lot about about Neville and how there doesn't matter how many points you put up on the board, their offense is ready to compete, and that that says a lot about, especially when you have a young quarterback like Parker Robinson who's in his first year as a starter.
Yeah, I mean that does say a lot. Final score is Neville 42, Calvary 38, and you kind of pretty much expected that type of game. And it was an entertaining football game. You knew that was going to be the case. And for Neville to find a way to win that game, they got statistically outgained, and all the numbers went towards Calvary's way. Neville was able to get the most important number, which was getting the more points, obviously, on the scoreboard. So a big win for Neville. And with that win, I mean, I feel just as strongly as I do with Calvary Baptist with the loss, but I think this win for Neville kind of skyrockets them up a little bit than I had them before. I think that was really big for Neville's standpoint, getting that win. And let's talk about the two games that you covered, Grant. So that's where we'll make the transition. On Friday, you covered Lakeshore and Chalmette. And Chalmette, it seems like they really like this squad. I mean, Coach Tucker, and I feel like this team's going to really surprise a lot of people this year. And the Lakeshore got a chance to really see Lakeshore and Coach Indes earlier this year. And it seems like that they as well have some expectations to make that jump, and see some of those type of Lakeshore teams we saw when they first emerged on the scene. So tell me about that game between the Owls and the Titans.
Well, yeah, this Lakeshore team is different from those teams coached by Craig Jones. I mean, those Craig Jones teams really love to throw the ball. I mean, look at the quarterbacks they produced. And, they went on to play like Southeastern and places like that. Christian Westcott comes into mind when it comes to Lakeshore. And,
Mr. Louisiana football, yeah.
Exactly, right. And the receiver for Yale right now, I forgot his name. I know his last name. Is it Jacob Bernard?
Jacob Bernard, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a completely different program than it was under Craig Jones. I mean, Brent Indes is a true run-first guy. I mean, he runs the wing tee, basically a version of the wing tee, like a shotgun wing tee. In a sense.
He's a wing tee master. Like, he's one of the masters.
Yeah, exactly, right. And he actually came out of retirement to take the job. I believe it was 2 years ago. So Lakeshore, they're gonna, when Indes came because of retirement to take a job. That just shows you the potential that this Lakeshore program has. And going into the game, because it was me, so I covered it, and then Joe Halm covered it. That NOLA.com, more specifically the St. Tammany Farmer.
Right.
And we were both talking before the game, we were really excited about this match because it was a really close game. It's probably one of the better matchups in the area. It probably was the best matchup on the North Shore, to be honest with you. Just between the two teams, they're very similar. Their styles. But Lakeshore really dominated up front. Lakeshore is really, really impressive, especially running the ball. They ran for I think over 150 between the 150 200 yard region, and Sean Brown ran for over 100 yards. He was a key catalyst in the run game. Because especially when you're missing Cato Pichon, who's out for the game because of an injury, and it also took the load off of Dylan Kusaks and Audrey Gross. That's what Coach Indes told me after the game, just how important he is to that backfield. That backfield is really good. A lot of those guys actually played last year for Lakeshore, and they were part of the backfield last year when I went to go cover them their playoff game against DeRidder, which was a very great
that was a good game. Yeah.
Good game that came down in the last minute. So they returned a good bit of their backfield from last year, of course. But what really impressed me, though, was their defense. Talking to Coach Indes last year, he said he spent about $5,000 in a tackling apparatus. I don't know if he spent that much. That just shows you how much he wanted to make tackling a focus for the season, and it showed. I mean, they made a lot of great open field tackles, and Chalmette had some speedsters on the outside, really. And they had some great tackles. It's like, oh wow, that was a great tackle. It wasn't like big hits; it was just great tackling, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they were solo. And then they're hounding the ball. I mean, they were going at it, and that was a big reason why they won 45-21 over Chalmette. It really could have been even worse if you weren't for a couple of mistakes. But that was a very impressive showing by the Titans of Lakeshore.
Yeah, it really was, and especially after Chalmette had a big win really the week before against John Eyre, and you think, okay, this is a chance to really build on that. But I got a chance to talk to Carter. Carter covered Lakeshore last week, and they said, man, they gave the ball out. 6 different players ran the football for Lakeshore. So you're going to get a lot of guys involved in the wing tee, and that's what they are. They're just a Brent Indes team is going to be physically tough in the trenches on the offensive side and on the defensive side, and that's what won them the game. They bullied Chalmette in a very impressive victory. Once again, your final score 45-21, and if anything, against Lakeshore, more people should be talking about them right now.
Yeah, and I have one last thing to say before I go into Lakeshore, of course.
Yeah, right.
But Chalmette, had a big win over John Eyre, but really they should have beat about more. John Eyre, it's not really the same John Eyre. I mean, they were up 30-0 at one point. I think they kind of let off, but really they should have beat Eyre by even more. That just kind of shows you like how much I think of Chalmette, and really that's what I've heard from other people. But I think what kind of got the game going, like, was, the game started off with a 70-yard bomb on the very first play to Kyle Guggenheimer. And that kind of opened up the game. And then from then on, it just seemed like Lakeshore had control of the game the whole entire time. And then also, I want to mention, they also had, they had a pick 6 near the end of the second quarter. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this Lakeshore's got this under the bag. There's no way they're going to lose this game. And once again, you said they had 6 ball carriers against, I believe it was it Fontainebleau they played?
Yeah, Fontainebleau. Yeah, it was Fontainebleau. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so that's just like they have a lot of depth back there. But right now, the issue with that, they have a lot of ball carriers, but about 2 or 3 of them also play on defense. So they have to stay healthy, not only for carrying the ball, having production on offense, but they also need it on defense. And so when you have that type of a situation, as you get later in the season and you get in the playoffs, that's going to be key factors. Can this Lakeshore team stay healthy? And if they are, they're actually a sleeper team when it comes to playoff time.
Right, and you mentioned that. I talked to Coach Indes earlier in the spring, and he had a couple guys out in the spring for a long time. So it's just keeping that group healthy, and as pretty much as healthy as they get, that's pretty much how far this team can get as well. So that's only going to take them as far as it can take them. Now let's talk about the Saturday game that both of us were at. I mean, you were covering for Crescent City. I was calling the game for VSN, and it was weird, right? Because at the very start of the game, I mean, it was a beautiful setup. I mean, I don't think there was really a cloud in the sky or it was a beautiful setup for a football game. You fast forward maybe an hour after that, it's just pitch darkness. Like, where did this come from? And all of a sudden, it's a monsoon in this game. But you knew that this was going to be between Rummel and U High, both teams that were pretty much knocking on the door of going to a state championship the last year. U High, obviously had a chance to beat Rummel last year. I thought that was really a big win, first big stepping stone for Rummel last year, getting that win over U High. These seniors, this veteran group, the senior leaders for this U High team wanted to get that revenge on Rummel, but Rummel was able to jump out to a 13-0 lead. U High did get a touchdown right before halftime, but Rummel was just able to sit on that 13-7 lead. The rain, the pretty much the monsoon played a factor in the second half, and Rummel was able to rely on their stout defense and their strong running game to preserve the 13-7 win.
Oh yeah, I mean, like last year, of course, it was a very lower scoring game last year. That was, when they were trying to still figure out how their quarterback situation was going to play out. Because remember, Emil Picarella transferred them last year, and even though he was a top prospect, they want to do the right thing and have a quarterback battle, and it was kind of back and forth. And then they finally, after the Rummel game where things kind of fell south, they went Emil Picarella, and then that ultimately was the same week as it was Catholic week, and they ended up beating Catholic and then that crazy ending that we're both at, actually. So, to kind of give you a backstory about the Rummel game from last year, this year was no different. They were both returned a lot of stars on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, U-High's Keelan Moses and Alec Haynes returning. Rummel has a bunch of players returning on the defense, including Lennis Finisher, cornerback, and Fred Banks on the defensive line, who was also very impressive throughout the game.
He was.
But the thing was, when I was driving to the game, I'm kind of glad you mentioned weather. When I was driving in, the rain was kind of going towards New Orleans when I was going in. My car was getting soaked. I got a good car wash out of it, so that was good. So I got a good car wash on the way there. And I got to the stadium. I was like, oh, this is a really beautiful day.
Yeah.
And maybe an hour and 50 minutes later, it's just a monsoon. Water's getting the press box. We had Will Franquez, the son of course, of LSU baseball SID, Bill Franquez.
Yeah.
He's been the PA announcer for the last couple of years.
Right.
And me and him are good friends. And even he was like, I don't even get paid enough for this. It flooded in the press. It was like legit flooded in the press box.
It was.
And but overall it's a great game, a great defensive battle. Really wasn't a boring game at all. I mean,
no, it wasn't.
Even though usually those low scoring games, like, oh, I want to go home. Please send me home. But no, it was a great defensive battle, a lot of excitement. And really, a lot of credit has to go to Rummel. The back-to-back weeks they dealt with location changes, and that's like a lot of teams in Louisiana. I mean, U-High had to deal with the same thing, but Rummel, I mean, last week there wasn't sure if they're going to play Joe Yenny Stadium. Then it gets moved to the Superdome, very last minute. This week, same thing. The Hurricane. We're supposed to play U-High. Then it got moved back to, and then they're going to move the game to Joe Yenny in the New Orleans area. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we're going to play back in Baton Rouge. And then they weren't sure if they're going to play on Friday or Saturday. So it was a lot of craziness going on for that Rummel team the last 2 weeks. But even though there's a lot of distractions, they held it together and put out a great performance. And really, a lot of credit has to go to I don't know how to pronounce his first name. I think it's Gennaro. Gennaro. Gennaro Buggage.
Yeah.
Gennaro Buggage.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And but he had a great game. I mean, really, he kept the offense under control. He had a lot of great play action fakes. He did whatever he could to win the game. He finished with 144 yards of passing and a touchdown. And he also had the big run earlier in the game to set up Rummel's first touchdown. So he was pretty much the player of the game on offense. I know Norm Taylor had a good game.
Yeah, he did.
But really, like, Gennaro Buggage kind of helped with the running game because U-High was afraid he was going to pass.
Yeah.
And the short passing game with those really young but athletic playmakers at receiver, paid the dividends and winning against U-High. And also their defense held the Cubs to 100. I believe that was 134 total yards of offense. So a great performance all around.
Blockable. Frederick Banks. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good U-High offensive line. They didn't have an answer for a big 99 Frederick Banks.
Right. Yeah, Fred's kind of a little bit of an he's a little undersized too compared to the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line was huge, and you have a guy who's 5'11", 6 foot. I don't know his actual weight, but I know he's a pretty well sized kid.
Right.
But he was moving around with ease, going in the backfield and causing havoc. So he's another player that needs a big shout out because he's fantastic.
I'm calling Andy tomorrow. Like, hey, 99 from Rummel needs an invite right now because he to me, Grant, I thought he was the MVP of that football game. The way that he was able to dominate that line.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of players like that in the Catholic League as well. Just I'll probably talk to you and Andy at some other time about a lot of the players that are in the Catholic League right now that are really impressive. That probably need a lot more coverage in terms of their talent, what they bring to the table for colleges, no matter what level.
Right. But big win, and Rummel did it, and I'm sure this is why Nick Mock is so excited about this team at this point in the year, because they won two different types of games in two totally different ways. They won a high-scoring shootout affair against LCA, and then you follow that with a game where your offense wasn't at its best, but your defense was able to slow down a really good quarterback, Emil Picarella, a U-High offense, and win so in a defensive slugfest type of game. So winning games against two great opponents in two totally different ways. I'm sure really Coach and the entire staff, Coach Mock and the entire staff is really excited about how they've looked in two totally different ways.
Yeah, and I was high before we move on to the next
Yeah.
game. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always high on Rummel because this was the first time they were actually healthy. Last year, when they made that run, they were missing a lot of their key players, and they were still able to make that Cinderella run in the playoffs. So now they're all healthy. There's a lot of high expectations over there on Severn Avenue, and rightfully so. But they just had two huge wins, and they'll have another big game against Shaw for the Battle of the Megaphone.
Ooh,
they
yeah.
actually lost the Battle of the Megaphone for the first time in over 15 years, or something crazy like that, to Shaw. So it's another big game, and if Rummel pulls that off, I mean, we're looking at a Rummel team that you might need to put in the state title, put in the tier of state title contenders, because they've always were a really good team. But I always want to know, okay, how are they going to do in the non-district, and then but if they finish the non-district 3-0, that makes it a lot easier come district play, because I mean that the Catholic League, or more specifically District 9 5A, that's a very tough district, and you need as much leverage in non-district as possible.
Yeah, and it doesn't get easier for U High. I think they got Catholic, who's coming off probably the two most impressive wins so far, back to back, like they did the start of the season. Now they play U High,
and their defense is much better than they were last year too.
Oh yeah, that's really carrying the running game and the defense, and Maury Clayton's made plays when they needed him to. So it's going to be another great matchup between the Cubs and the Bears. You mentioned Rummel and Shaw, so both rivalry games, right? So it's going to be really fun to watch. Now let's move ahead and talk about really a team that you were high about talking about them, and John F. Kennedy. I mean, as far as this win for over Warren Easton, I feel like everybody's kind of heard about them in their rise a little bit with JFK, but I feel like this win is like, hey, everybody, we're here and we're not going anywhere, and like we are for real. Like, we're going to contend for a state championship. Like, that was a statement win as any statement win I've seen over the week.
Yeah, I mean, and last year they had a similar win like that over a very talented Terrebonne team. But in terms of name, Terrebonne is not as big as Warren Easton in the New Orleans metro area. I mean, I can't say enough about the job that Linares Elpage has done. I mean, I've talked about it before, what he kind of inherited. Remember, like I have to say this all the time, when he first took over that program, they only had about 23 players on the team. And you go from that to now a state title contender, and you pick up a huge win over a Warren Easton team that is very well known, not only across the New Orleans area, but the state of Louisiana. That win on Friday night sent shockwaves across, not even just New Orleans, but across the state. Because I said this before, like, JFK is the biggest sleeper in terms of all the, what you kind of consider the state title contention. Everyone knew they were a great team, and everyone knows about, back-to-back quarterfinals appearances. And really last year, they had a tough loss to Shaw that, that was determined basically in the final minutes. I think people are like, okay, how good is this JFK team? Well, you beat a team like Warren Easton, and you're in the lead the whole entire time. You kept in control of the lead the whole entire time. The receivers were deadly the whole entire night. They have 4 really good receivers. 2 of them are going D1. You got 2 more that I think should get a few more looks from colleges as well. That's what makes this JFK team special, because they're different from other teams in the New Orleans area. A lot of teams in New Orleans like to run the ball, to set the pass. JFK is the opposite. They want to set their pass. They want to pass the ball to set up the run. And that, having a win like that over Warren Easton is now has all eyeballs on JFK. And it's a matter of how they're going to deal with the pressure. Because of the spotlight. However, they had Linares Elpage was a fantastic player. Tulane, he's in the Tulane Hall of Fame, for Christ's sakes. All conference players. So I think having a guy like him kind of will help kind of temper the pressure off of the players at JFK.
The final score 36-26 over Warren Easton, and like you mentioned, Grant, You took the words out of my mouth. Like, this was a team. I mean, this was a game that puts you into that spotlight. Now it's like, oh, JFK beat Warren Easton. I mean, you know they made the quarterfinals the last 2 years, but as far as regular season, early eyes on your usual suspects, and you forget about JFK. But this is a game like, oh, we got to talk about JFK now. And so handling that success, that's kind of like the next step for this program to see how they fare with
Yeah,
that.
and I looked at the last few years of of teams they've been. I mean, this is probably the most signature win this program's ever had.
Yeah,
I mean, if you really think about it, and also, last week they beat Scotlandville 5A team. This week, this past weekend, talking about week 2, they beat. Of course, we're talking about the Warren Easton win. Next week they play against St. Amand, and I think week 4 or 5 they play against St. Paul. So I mean. If they win against St. Amand, that's 3 5A teams that they beat.
Yeah.
And really that will play well when it comes to power ratings. Because remember, power ratings are based off of who you beat and who you faced. And if you already beat 2 5A teams, but if you beat a third, they're definitely a top 5 seed, in my opinion, when it comes to playoff time. Really, I mean, if they finish off the season 9-1, I believe that's probably what they're going to finish off with. Because I don't see them beating St. Paul's, but they could.
Yeah.
But let's say they finish the season 9-1. They're at the record season of 9-1. They're a top 3 seed.
Oh yeah,
based off of the teams they played.
If that's the loss too that they lost to, like they're gonna be a high seed. Yeah. I mean Darren's board too. I mean he's a great player. I mean the Reed touchdown passes we've called his name the last couple of years. Seemed like we forget about him, but I mean all he does is win for this team.
Right.
And he's going to become a program great for sure when it's all said and done.
He already is.
He already is. He already is.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah, he is. He's one of the founding guys setting the foundation for this program, and he already is. But that's really a chance to really set his name apart, especially to make it to the Superdome for the first time. Yep. So a couple more games to talk with Grant Chachere of Crescent City Sports, River Sports Media, and Acadiana Zachary. I mean, that's another big headliner. On which was a loaded, really Saturday slate, if you think about it, and it was a really big game. I mean, obviously, when you have 2 big time programs in Acadiana and Zachary, when the high expectations, I mean, state championships every year. I mean, these 2 teams, I mean, they win state championships or compete most of the time every year. And you pretty much kind of figured it was going to be a good game. It really was. But in the end, Acadiana was able just to pull away a little bit. I believe the final score was 43-28 against Zachary, I believe. But I'll double check that. But 43-28 against Zachary, able to pull away a little bit. We talked about it with Acadiana, right? I mean, they can run the football. They always can run the football. Jonah Gaucher is a really good running back for them. But what sets them apart offensively is that they can throw the football probably as well as they've ever have thrown it. And you saw it here with the DeBetta brothers, Russell Babineau, and they were just too much at this point for Zachary to really have a shootout with them.
Yeah, I mean, Acadiana overall is just a better team than Zachary, right? I mean, just look at the players that Acadiana has compared to Zachary. This is not the same Zachary that we're accustomed to seeing, right? I think Zachary's a great team. I think Zachary is a team that will go far in the playoffs, maybe, but I don't think they're really a state title team. Just because I feel like a lot of their better players are younger, right? That's kind of how it is when you have all this roster turnover the last couple year or two. But they're still going to be a very good team. Caleb Gonzalez is still a solid quarterback. Christian Brooks is a fantastic receiver, and I think he's going to have a big year as the season goes along, and he will pick up a few offers as well. But this Acadiana team was a lot more experienced than the Zachary team. This Acadiana team, I mean, you got a receiver. Colin DeBetta. Colin is the receiver, right? They're brothers. I mean,
yeah. You got Colin.
Yeah, so Colin's a D1 receiver.
No, yeah. I'm gonna double check it, but
I think Caden's a quarterback. But Colin,
Caden's a quarterback. Colin is a receiver. Yep.
Okay. Right. So Caden was 3 for 6 for 94 yards and a touchdown. He also had 6 carries for 62 yards. And then his touchdown pass actually came to his brother, which was a long touchdown pass as well. Russell Babineau, of course, is a UL commit. Yeah. And then Jonah Gaucher 24 carries, 265
deal.
yards, 2
Yeah.
touchdowns. That's a very, very talented Acadian team. And it's not also to mention their defense as well was also very talented too. So, when you have that much talent and that much experience, I was always going to lean towards Acadiana. But Zachary, I think, is a team that is going to get better as the season goes along. Just because that's how I see the team right now. Because they're kind of on the younger side of things compared to the other previous Zachary teams.
Yeah.
So I think as the season goes along, they're going to get better. As we saw that last year. Zachary got better as the season went along. As he got in later season, they just got better and better and better. But that's considering the fact that they had to replace a guy like Eli Holston, who was their starter for 3 years. But yeah, once again, the Zachary's team is going to get better and better as it goes along. You can't doubt Coach Brew and the Broncos. But that's a huge one for Acadiana. Very excited to see both teams as the season goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zachary was actually winning that football game heading into the fourth quarter. They were up 28-22, 21 unanswered points. You talked about the DeBetta brothers striking, and then Jonah Gaucher at the end had 2 long runs of 68 yards and 46 yards. Really put the dagger in Zachary. But how about a stretch for Coach McCullough? He's not playing around for the start of the season. So week 1, you play Ruston, which is already the top team in the state. Then you play Zachary in week 2, and in week 3 you got to play St. Thomas More. So how about that stretch for Acadiana? Yeah. They're not messing around.
Yeah, they had a great game against, even though they lost against Ruston, they had a great game against Ruston too. Just Ruston was just the better team that night. Just because Jonathan Brantley, he's Joshua Brantley. Josh Brantley, had threw for 350 yards. He's really come along. When he's playing like that, you can't beat Ruston. You just can't, right? Right. But Acadiana, I think this. We're gonna probably talk about it in our show that I do that you come on. But I think I'm gonna pick Acadiana to win against St. Thomas More, just based off what we've seen from Acadiana past 2 weeks. But once again, I'm really excited to see the Wrecking Rams as the season goes along, because it's a team that's definitely a state title contender. And then also Zachary is a team that I think right now they may not look like it, but I think as the season goes along, they're a team that you still need to watch out for. Just with that coaching staff, that's led by David Brewerton, and of course Zachary is always going to have talent, even though they may not be the same team as they were the past 5-10 years.
They're always playing their best football at the end of the year. Zachary's always playing their best football. So they're going to be really scary by the end of the year. And right now, Acadiana, I mentioned some of the top teams in the state. Right now, I have them up there, maybe like the 3rd or 4th best team in the state right now, just how balanced they really are. So we got one more game to talk about. And speaking about not messing around, the Coach Valdez era, Robert Valdez era, has started as perfectly as you can even imagine it. First off, they really beat the doors down out of a really good and talented McDonald 35 team. And then you make an extra, even a bigger statement by defeating Cecilia, which was in the state championship game last year, returns a lot of guys back. And they defeat Cecilia 58-34. How about the St. Augustine offense? 8 touchdowns on offense. And they also add one on special teams. The Purple Knights, they are really excited about how the Robert Valdez era is starting off.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think this is a team that, they're McDonald 35, they're talented, but they also beat them 70-13 last year. With a team that surprisingly won 3 games last year, which shocked a lot of people, and that led to St. Aug changing the program, getting rid of their previous coach, and getting a guy like Robert Valdez. But then you beat a team like Cecilia, and that kind of opens your eyes a bit. The thing is, I'll say this: St. Aug's just bigger than Cecilia, which a huge advantage to St. Aug, especially given how big their line of scrimmage is, and then also the talent that they have. But picking up a big win over a very talented program like Cecilia by double digits is a huge win for this Purple Knight squad. It'll be very interesting to see how they fare as the season goes along. Next week, they play one of the top teams from the state of Missouri that has multiple D1 prospects on that team. So it would be very interesting to see how they play against them, see how they fare against one of the better teams around the country. But then also their next stretch of games, I believe they play Warren Easton right after that, and they have Ed Carr too. I'm going to double check that. But St. Aug, I mean, despite losing Jakeem Stewart, of course, I think everyone's heard the news that he will be playing at Carr. Well, he's not playing, but he enrolled at Carr because he's reclassifying for the class of 2025.
Right.
But looking at St. Aug's schedule, so yeah, of course they played the team. I believe it was. Forgive me if I forget their name, but I'm actually looking at the schedule right now. But they play. I believe it's a Cardinal Ritter College Prep, which is in the state of Missouri. They have multiple D1 prospects. I actually looked it up earlier, a few weeks ago. But then after that, they play Easton, they play Carr, they play Jesuit, they play Rummel. So really, these next 4 or 5 games are really going to show you how good the St. Aug team is. I have them going about 6-4, 7-3, just because it's kind of a it's a cultural change with the new coach coming in, like a guy like Robert Valdez, and then also the Catholic League or District 9 5A, because obviously you have 2 public schools in there, and then also Curtis, which is a non-Catholic school. That's a really tough slate of games, right? There's no pushover game. I told you this before. A lot of people will say that the Catholic League is the SEC or even the SEC West, but even the SEC, you have a pushover game. There's no pushover game in the Catholic League. And Jesuits improved. Rummel, we've just talked about Rummel. We already talked about Warren Easton. I mean, they got a really big offensive line, one of the better offensive lines to say, and 2 fantastic running backs. You have Brother Martin, who's I know you talked about it previously in the show,
right?
But their passing attack is awesome.
Easton Royal is pretty good. He's a pretty good
receiver. And then Broen Lipscomb, Rex LeBlanc, who also had 100 yards against St. Paul's.
Seth's a good quarterback too. Yep.
Well, they have 2. But they have 2 of them, right? Let's say Seth goes down, you just bring in Hudson Fields. I mean, that's a fantastic pass attack they have. But I know I'm probably missing some as well. But the Catholic League is really tough, right? So that's why I say they're about a 6-4, 7-3 team. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they went 8-2 or 9-1.
Yeah, confidence booster for St. Aug's quarterback Vaishon Coulon, because he
was awesome.
touchdowns and he ran for 2 more. So Purple Knights are really liking this. In the years past, you really know St. Aug. You know this program. Like, they've always been dangerous. Like, they've always been kind of hovering around maybe 6-4, 5-5, 7-3, like kind of hovering around that. But they're always dangerous, no matter the matchup. So you always gotta look out for the Purple Knights. But Cecilia was going to score their points. They did. They got Diesel Solari, really great quarterback for them. They got a ton of weapons on their side too. They're going to score their points, but they scored 34. But it shows you how impressive their effort was when they scored 34, and you still lose by over 20. So 24.
St. Aug scored 58 points. I mean,
58 points.
Take Coulon. The thing about St. Aug, there's 2 things about St. Aug. One is, do they have the right coach? The second thing was, do they have a quarterback? And they got both. And also, there's a third thing, which is obviously, do they have a kicker? I don't know about that situation yet. That's been a huge thing about St. Aug, is that do they have the kicker? Because they've lost a lot of big time games. A lot of games they would have sent them to the Dome because of just special teams miscues. So,
right.
I'm pretty sure they'll figure that out. But like St. Aug, if they could keep this up, that's a scary team. Even when St. Aug wasn't at their best, to say they're like a 6-4 team, they always gave a team a scare. Like they gave Catholic a scare a couple years ago. They gave Rummel. They gave that 2019 Rummel team a scare. They should have beat the 2019 Rummel team. That's one of the greatest. That team had one of the greatest defenses in the state's history. So St. Aug's always going to give you a scare. But it was always a matter of, do they have the right pieces to become a state title contender? And I don't think it's going to be this year, but in years to come, if Coach Valdez is still there, my God, this team is scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And the train's rolling right now, or at least early on in the season for the Purple Knights, and we'll see how it carries on to the rest of the way. So exciting week 2 slate. We kind of recap the games we want to talk about, Grant, but it was a weird week. Games play on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we're hoping we get a normal week next week, man. That everything's back to normal.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think hurricane season's just about over. It could rain still, but I think we're getting to that point in time where the rain's kind of calmed down, and we'll just have some great high school football. And this week's gonna be no different than the other 2 weeks. Still gonna be some great football. Glad the helmets are clamoring around, and the season's moving a lot quicker than I thought it would. And we were already in week 3.
Week 3,
so.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. But Grant, thanks for joining me on Ballin In Da Boot. Looking forward to catching up with you on your show as well for Rigorous Sports Media as well. Friday nights on the Bayou. So looking forward to check out that show. Subscribe to their Rigorous Sports Network YouTube channel as well. Grant, anything else you want to plug in before we head out?
Oh no, not really. I'm just getting ready for week 3. Big weekend, of course. And a lot of big-time matchups. Of course, Dunham will take on St. Charles.
Yeah.
And then also, like I mentioned earlier, the megaphone game between Shaw and Rummel will really show, how good both those teams can be. And if Rummel wins that game, they're a top contender. Same thing for Shaw. They beat a team like Rummel. It lifts them up. It's an elevation game, essentially. Yeah. So very excited about week 3.
Oh, it's going to be exciting as always. We only have a couple of these every year during the fall. So we're going to join them every way we can. So for Grant Chachere, I'm Jace LeJeune. We'll see you next time as we'll catch up with Grant next week, give his thoughts on the high school football week 3 action here on Ballin In Da Boot.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again, Jace, for having me on. I'm glad we're doing this weekly, man.
Yep, me too, man.
Hello, everyone. This is Jace LeJeune from Gridiron Football. We're here on another exciting segment here on Ballin In Da Boot. And of course, I'm joined as always talking flag, talking middle school with our guys, our Louisiana prospects, of course Kenneth and Tony. And week in, week out, we're just going to give you what's going on around not only high school football, which you've seen in the first segment, but also middle school and flag football. And we're going to talk a little bit more. I know the last couple of shows talked a lot about flag football. We'll still continue to do that, but we're going to sneak a little bit more and more of the middle school stuff as well. So, guys, tell us what's been going on with Louisiana prospects since the last time we talked.
Busy week. This week coming up, we're getting ready to gear off with our all-girls league. That'll be kicking off this Sunday. With our youth league, our regular rec league that we do, that'll be starting next Wednesday. We're actually going to kick it off with a scrimmage Monday, a little scrimmage game, get everybody going, kind of see what they have, and just kind of take off Wednesday, start going into the season.
Okay.
So, a lot going on and lots more to come for sure.
Yeah, it's not just the guys. The girls getting involved too in flag football and showing what their gifts are and talents are. So they belong as well. Excellent. And Kenneth, what's been going on as well? Anything to elaborate on?
Like you said, it's never stopping. Y'all understand as well, even with Gridiron, but it never stops. It's always next thing up. What's the next thing we can do that can separate us from the rest, while also building and giving into these kids to be able to develop them in both the game of flag and football until the girls league coming up and then the fall league at the same time, and then we're gonna have our bring your own team league in the late fall. So it's just a lot of different avenues for us to be able to get more in touch with the kids and really seeing them on the field. So we're excited.
I know Tony just said about the girls flag football season getting started as well for the tournament for y'all next week, and it's been a good time for both the guys and girls to talk about Team USA. I believe taking home gold in flag football, the World Championship, so held in Finland. So talk about how cool that is, again, both the guys and the girls, and both of them coming home with gold.
Yeah, it was definitely a good experience to be able to see and following along with them. Great squad by both teams. The men's team led by Darryl Hoosh, and then the women's team led by Vanita Crouch. And also both excellently led teams, very well executed on both sides of the ball. Men's team, they didn't allow no more than I think 28 points scored on them in the whole tournament, and then women's team, I think it was like 48 that they didn't allow scored on them. So it was just strong defense and then dominant offense around. So it's great to see, especially gearing towards 2028 with the Olympics coming to town. I think it's kind of building that excitement up a little bit.
Well, the Kansas City Chiefs are going for their third straight Super Bowl, right? But the guys, was that 3 straight gold medals for them?
3-peat. Just like Ken said, just total domination. That team, the men's team is just loaded with just athletes, speed, finesse, and they can spread you out, do all kind of things. Same with the girls. I mean, the committee, they just do a good job overall, just picking some of the best talent in the nation. So to bring that team together. So
we're going to talk about defense here. I mean, that's the mantra: defense wins championships. That's always an interesting conversation we like to have when we talk about flag football, right? So, and speaking of that, like, what is the best defense to run? Because flag football is wide open. I mean, you're definitely throwing the football. It's definitely a finesse type of league. But because of that, how do you approach that defensively? Or I guess I'm sure y'all two are going to talk about it. Y'all rather play man, or y'all rather play zone? What do you think is the best defense, especially when you're trying to get stops and trying to get those important stops in flag football?
If I'm gonna play a defense in flag, my first up would be man. All right, if you got the athletes, some guys that can run and good hips, good corners, that can cover. Saints.
Yeah.
But you got some guys that could cover. I feel like man is the best route to go in the 5v5 format, just because it's so fast. Look, you get guys lock up. Do what they need to do, 3 downs and execute. Look, it's quicker the offense. You speed the game up and you get the offense on the field quick.
Okay, so, Kenneth, do you agree with that, or do you prefer zone?
I'm definitely on the same page with them.
Okay.
In terms of running that man coverage, there's over the years you continue to see different ways that you see it expanded into the game. I mean, you can run just a basic man, and then you can run a man while also sending that rusher, which, like Tony said, you have those DBs that are able to have good hips, be able to play tight coverage. When you're also sending that rush, it makes it a little difficult to be able to get that ball out safely, because everybody's covered. So you're kind of having to make sure you're forcing the ball into a good window, good position, and while also not getting into the hands of the defender.
Yeah, there's different varieties of man and zone. We're talking about tackle football. Is there that much variety in terms of how much stuff you can do in terms of how you call defense in flag football?
There's schemes. You have your man to zone schemes. Hey, it's no different than the tackle side, of course, right?
Okay.
We show one thing, but hey, we look like we're in zone, but we're in man. We look like we're in man, but we're going to play zone.
Okay.
Hey, you think the rush is coming from the middle? Hey, we might send it from the corner. So there's a few variations and changes and, things you can do to, create confusion on the field and flag.
Even like kind of, you run like a box safety look. We'll run like a 3-2. And we'll send the rush from the middle, and we'll bring that safety right back where that rush came from. So now we're showing a 3-2 cover 2 principles, but now we're going to drop into a cover 3 principle. And so it's just those different looks. We'll shrink the whole defense and hold the whole middle of the field for coverage and leave the outside sidelines available. We call it a box. So we'll play everybody kind of tight towards the middle, because a lot of teams try to the quick passes over the middle, little quick dishes out to the center, different things like that. So we'll shrink everybody down, and we'll kind of, let them try to throw it outside to us, and, kind of 2 safeties up top, ball thrown out there, kind of split them out towards the sideline. So a lot of different looks that you can do. It's definitely a deep conversation, but it's great the different looks that you see on defense.
I think it's great practice for really any quarterback. It doesn't matter if you're playing flag or tackle, like especially for a tackle quarterback too. Sometimes that's why you have 7-on-7s, just to kind of get that picture and say, okay, sometimes what if a defense going to cover as this and come in as this, and you get yourself a picture of what you can probably see like on a Friday night.
Y'all heard it. Jay said 7v7, 5v5 is great for the quarterbacks.
Yep, it is. Yeah. Either way, it's really great practice. I still agree with that. Now we can make the transition as well. So we're now talking about the other side of football, right? About how various you really are in flag football and defense, and how many different formations and different stuff it is from the offense. Like, how wide open can you make it in flag football?
Ken's the offensive guru.
So we're gonna go with Ken for this question.
Man, offense is so much fun. I mean, we just know that just from watching regular football. I mean, offense is where the action's at. Flag flag football gives you so much opportunities and things to do that you may not always be able to do in tackle, just because you have more guys on the field, more ways to cover. My first instinct to always go to is something that we kind of know of called Dixie, and Dixie is a lot of fun once you execute it correctly. Once you got your quarterback, you have your guy in the backfield that you dump it down to. Now your quarterback flag, everybody is athletes, so quarterback's got to be able to catch too. Once your quarterback drops it off, he's dropping into coverage for a pass now. And so what you're doing there when you go Dixie is you're forcing, if a defense is in zone, they've got to go man now because you have an empty receiver now that's not accounted for.
Right.
So if he's not covered, then okay, well, we're in a little bit of trouble. If the corner, first instinct, they see the person in front of them with the ball, they may blitz because they say, oh, person with ball, let me go get him. Now you're freeing up that flat. So a lot of different things that Dixie gives you. We talked about impeding the rusher the first week. Teams will go, kind of like a tight bunch if they're in man and they have a rush coming in. That man coverage, see a lot of crossing routes out of it. I'm missing.
Maybe like bunch formations or a lot of bunch formations.
A lot of bunch formations. So you'll take the center and you'll line everybody up as close to the center as possible. All your receivers. So you'll put like 2 on one side, 1 on the other. So you got 4 just all tight, close together on the line. And when the ball snap, you'll have 1 go on a streak, 1 come right behind them. And you're just crossing everybody up. So it works well. And then we even do some RPO action in a flag. So we talked about if you double handoff in flag. So we'll do some RPOs and we'll ride the ball out, try and make the rusher come to one of the two, and then we'll either pull it or hey, we'll just give it to the running back. So things that they'll see later on in high school.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot you can do. Like I said, Ken's a Giro, different formation. He loves his stuff. He does a great job with our travel teams. With me with offense, we have guys. I'm looking for the Dixie too. If you want to play zone, play 7 yards off. Well, hey, we'll go ahead and drop it to the Dixie, and we'll go ahead and spread y'all out, make you make commitments, and just try to cause confusion.
Tony's being modest. Sorry, I cut him off, but Jace, we'll go to tournament. I think Tony's like, Ken, what are we doing? Why we just running our regular plays right now? Man, run a go route on the left side. Backpedal. What are we doing?
He's doing the coach media talk of it. He's on.
Ken, what are you doing? Run a go route. I'm like, Tony, I'm going to run a go route. Let me call this play that has a go route going to this side.
Ken,
just give it to him.
Ken likes to set our opponents up, which is great. But when I see a mismatch, I go crazy. Hey, he cannot check him. Let's go jump ball right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's look how Nussbanger was going to Lacey to start that.
Yeah, right.
Hey, if I see a guy that cannot cover, corner that has bad hips, this poor technique, hey, let's attack this guy right now. Take advantage of him. But just me with offense, so yeah, if you're playing a zone, look, we're going Dixie, we're going to spread you out. You want to play man, hey, let's bunch it up, misdirection, motions. Hey, let's get them confused right now off the bat. So,
absolutely.
But definitely a lot of variations you can do offensively in the 5v5 scheme.
From the offensive side, from calling offense, my eyes light up when we see a team play zone. We play a lot of quick off the line too. Under center, we'll hit you quick off the line. There's zones there. Our kids know it. We teach it to them, so they all get excited when we have a team play zone. They're like, okay, we're about to eat. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of chess pieces moving around. It's not just like just running around and just playing backyard football. There's a lot of chess pieces being moved around, and just like there is with the tackle game. And one more conversation before we go and make the transition to middle school football. And this is a conversation we previewed at one show that we've done earlier. And let's continue the arguments, I guess. We're going to keep it going because if you have 5 NFL players for your defense, right? We're going to just go with on the defense side. 5 NFL players that you're going to pick to join the Olympic team. What 5 NFL players are you bringing to help you win? Especially talking about defense wins championships. Yeah. What 5 guys you really want out there? Who wants to start and kick this thing off? Yes, Tony?
Who's your quarterback?
DB. Oh, are we talking defense?
I think it's defensive players that got to play on the flag team though. So they got to play both sides.
Okay, they got to play both sides, but they have to be defensive NFL players.
I got you. Definitely Lattimore, my cornerback.
Okay.
I think we talked about this. Micah Parsons, my middle guy, middle Negro rusher type guy.
Okay.
After that, I'm kind of I'm kind of iffy.
Okay.
I'm ask Ken on this one. Like, finish my team
Okay.
off.
So Tony's got the 2. So he's got Parsons and Lattimore. Who are the other 3?
So you're doing them as if these defensive guys are playing both sides of the ball, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm just making sure that that's what you're saying. So what, you had Lattimore and Parsons. I'm gonna have to piggyback off what you said 2 weeks ago. I mean, you gotta add Stingley out there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So now my thing that I'm thinking of now is what defensive player would I put? Okay, I got you. So I'm trying to think what defensive player in the NFL could play quarterback. First do-it-all guy that comes to my mind is Chargers safety
Derwin James. I was thinking Derwin James in my mind as well.
Derwin James is a character, man. Like he's a guy that I just think he could absolutely do it all. You need him to go play quarterback. He's like, I got you.
So we got Stingley,
that's 4.
Parsons, Stingley,
and Derwin.
And Derwin James. So that's 4, right? So we need one more
icing
person.
on the cake here.
Yeah.
Need you either a big guy or a speed guy.
Yeah, we got Parsons. I mean,
so you need you a speed guy.
Yeah.
So a speed guy.
Defensively, speed guy.
Yeah. Got to be a defensive guy.
Yeah. Might have to add Jason this one for this one.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm thinking over here. So you could have a guy like who's always really good around the football. Is maybe like a Trevon Diggs type of guy, who's like he played offense, playing on defense.
Yeah.
Yep. He started off as a wide receiver against Alabama.
Yep.
Perfect.
So
enough said. There
you go.
That's
You can do it. You can do it both anyway. So
and I think they would dominate on offense and defense. Really.
Absolutely.
He's done both.
They were putting Darryl at quarterback though. I don't know why he came to mind, but I was like, that's just a guy.
And also maybe if you want an extra tight end like Parsons, we're talking about like T.J. Watt or something like that too. You know, have him out there.
Travis Kelce played quarterback in high school.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
True.
Yep. So
how things change, huh?
Yeah. So maybe next week we'll talk about offense, and we definitely have a pretty good idea of what we're talking about offensive guys. That could play in the Olympic team, and we can talk more about that. But now, guys, let's talk about middle school football, and we got a little bit more conversation of it because our last previous conversation has been more about flag, just because middle school football is already getting kicked off, just getting started. So we're going to talk about y'all said that y'all went to Galvez and San Mal last time we talked, right? Or y'all planning on going to
heading there tonight? Yes.
Okay.
Middle school season kicks off tonight.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously this is recorded before, but y'all will be able to see this down the road. So, but yeah, so San Mal Middle. So tell me about some guys to watch out for San Mal. We know about the Gators on the high school side and what Coach Oliver has done for that program. So what should we expect from the young ones, the baby Gators, I guess is what we gotta call them, right?
So talking to Coach Chad, Coach Wayne, players, to look out for. They got 2 running backs this season. Mr. Caleb Baptiste, Aiden Spite.
Okay.
They both play running back. They also play slot for him also. These guys, every guy on this list that he named, one thing I enjoyed him saying was how high character these guys are. But he said these guys are elusive. They can make a play at any time. So we're looking forward to seeing what they can do. They're a young team too. This season they lost a lot last season. A lot of 8th graders, so they're a loaded 7th grade team.
I think Santa Monica, they won the middle school last year, right? They won. Lake ended up winning.
Won.
Okay,
yeah,
it was them 2 in the championship.
And Lake's the sleeper this year.
Correct.
Yeah, 2 different teams expected to win. So but these 2 guys are expected to help the offense to do some big things for them in their spread pistol formation. And they also have a good they named Jaden Devertel, their center.
Okay.
Said he's a good leader, good guy, hold the line together and just provide that leadership that they need there.
Okay.
So he said, this is key focus. Those guys looking forward to what they can do this season, help the team.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And these are always guys. These guys that they're talking about. These are also guys we're going to be keeping an eye out for when we talk about the junior high bowl game at the end of the year for Gridiron Football. So we talk about San Mal. Like you said that they're a pistol team, but they like to run the football from the pistol.
Excited to see them
run the ball. And Kenneth, now we'll talk about Galvez Middle. That's who they're playing. So it looks like that they're dealing with some injuries right now, but there's some talent right there. What can you tell us about Galvez?
Tony kind of spoke with Galvez a little bit more than I got more insight on, but I definitely know, Galvez coming into, this first week, they had their jamboree last week, had a lot of injuries. Do you want me to stop now? I can stop now.
Okay, stop. Okay. All right. So we just talked about Sandmall offensively. What can you tell us, Kenneth, about Galvez and how their offense is going to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming into the season, like we said, teams just finished their jamborees this past week. Galvez is, gearing up and getting ready. They had a few injuries that they sustained after that first week jamboree, so they're trying to get everybody in position to still be able to step up, next man up. After talking, with Coach Babin. He did tell us some guys are going to need to play, both sides of the ball. A lot of key guys are going to need to step up in order to make plays. But they still feel confident in, the offense that they're putting out on the field and the defense that they're being able to play. Led by, their quarterback is Aiden Green, and then they got a good offensive lineman, Renee Douglas. So just first off, relying out of them two, and then the rest of, a younger offensive line that, they plan to coach up and work with this season. Two studs is what we're being told by the coaching staff, as well as Malik Schofield and then Trey Vaughn, both of which play running back and slot. So they're both running back and slot option players. So coach is really looking to being able to air it out this season, but also still being able to get a strong ground game going and being able to attack teams with the run game. So being able to be multidimensional with a strong quarterback back there in the pocket to air it out is what's going to set Galvez apart, I think, this season as they continue to, go for a district title this year.
Yeah, especially you can throw the football at the middle school level and have success at it, have consistency at it. It's going to be tough for you to, it's going to be tough for teams to beat you. Now, defensively, we're going to go back to Sandmall. What kind of defense do they run, and who are some guys who should keep an eye on?
So Chad, talking to Coach Chad, he was really excited. They're going to run a 4-2-5 with a nickel there. So you can expect to see them doing that. And they were really high on their linebacker, Mr. Jaden White.
Okay.
They told me to expect this guy to do some damage this season.
Okay.
So really looking forward to seeing him tonight and seeing what he brings to the table, as Coach explained to me. But right now, that's their main guy. They're another team, like I said, they're young, lost a lot of 8th graders, so it's going to be, they're optimistic about this season.
Okay.
So, like I told Tony, definitely interested to see if he's going to be in that Sam role, being able to see what they're going to do with him. I'm really excited to see this young athlete play tonight because running a 4-2-5, especially in that nickel, you're going to need a guy to. We need you to go off the edge this play. Hey, we need you to drop back into zone. Hey, we need you to man this guy up coming out the flat. Like it's a lot that can potentially fall on this kid to be able to handle. And if he, executes this role, it's going to be real impressive to see tonight, especially first game.
Very rare, to see a middle school running a 4-2-5.
Right.
That's not something you just teach. Usually 4-3.
We have 4-3, 4-4. Yeah, right.
Basically.
Yeah, 4-2-5. So that's a little bit more complex.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to know your assignment and be real, technical, playing a defense like that at the middle school level. So
I guess you can definitely see, leaning back on how we talked about their offense and their defense, they're definitely probably going to be leaning more on their defensive side of the ball.
Yep. So Galvez runs more of a conventional middle school defense, right? With a 50 front, like 4-4 defense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they coaches saying Coach Babin was telling me about his defense. He's high on the offense, right? Defense, they with the injuries that happened last weekend, the jamboree kind of put them in a tough situation. But they have some guys that have stepped up this week at practice, and looking forward to one of those guys being, the DB Braden Lane. He's a young guy, 7th grader that just stepped. They found him in practice, got him going to work this week, and he did a great job in practice one-on-ones. Yeah, wow. So they're looking forward to him doing, filling that void for some, some guys that got injured last weekend. Also, they have a DN, Donald Jones.
Okay. Name just sounds scary.
Yeah.
Sounds like he come from there. It's real hard, but
sounds like a DN.
Yeah. So Donald actually plays DN and wide receiver for him. So,
wow. Okay.
I'll tell you something just based on history of, defensive ends that are athletic, right? So it sounds like an athletic DN to me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
The fact that he can play receiver too. So I'm guessing he must have a good speed rush on that edge too.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough.
So, actually looking forward to, watching these guys tonight. And like I said, Coach spoke, very highly of all these guys, high character guys. So looking forward to seeing what they can do tonight in the game and just kind of examine the talent and, hopefully get some of these guys to the middle school bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll probably get some highlights from these guys from the game tonight, and we'll probably talk about the game next week and recap that a little bit between San Maul and Galvez. So before we wrap up, do y'all want to make a prediction? Do y'all have an idea? Like, do y'all pick a winner here? I mean, it sounds like to me, just like hearing what y'all talking about, I mean, San Maul must be the favorite, knowing that they're the healthier team right now, and I think that might pay dividends for them because of that.
Yeah, true that. Like I said, they're loaded with 7th graders. And Coach Bennett's feeling good about his offense. So we'll definitely.
Coach should.
Right. So balanced team, but he also said you got to watch St. Amar, because sometimes they'll say that we don't have much, and they show up and. They got they got some guys that they can actually play and make a big impact right away, even though they're 7th graders.
Right.
So
I think Jace, even though we got a lot of some guys that got hurt. Tony, like you mentioned at the end with Donald Jones. I think it's going to be a close one. It's a little rainy out for today's game.
Yeah,
so
I'm noticing that.
See some more. Especially playing on that turf, we're going to see some more ground game action. But I think Galvez just might get away with this one this week. Personally, we're going to see what happens.
We'll see.
We'll see. Hey, St. Amar's a home team. We playing at the Pit.
It's always tough to play the Pit. I know from experience.
They feel good about the defense, and like he said, it's a rainy day, so we'll see. I'm gonna go.
In the pit, in the swamp.
It's gonna be a matter of who scores last. Last score.
First week, first game to kick things off for the season. So,
first to score. Thank you.
First to score.
Thank you, Alex. If you could please.
But looking forward to kicking off with we look to have fun with this season with the middle school games. Not only covering Ascension but Baton Rouge and across the river. May even be in a Vols Parish.
That'll be great.
The bunky middle out.
Up there. I got a good connection between two strong athletes up there, so we definitely have to go up there and check them out.
Absolutely. But we'll have coverage on the next show we'll probably talk about the game, recap it. We'll probably have some video highlights from both Tony and Kenneth and recap from them and we'll also have some recaps on the high school side of it as well, because our writers are going to be out there covering games. So the first segment, you actually get to really see not only me but all the other writers we have here at Gridiron Football talk about the high school games they've been to for the week. So we're going to have a lot more highlights, a lot more content on the Ballin In Da Boot show. Anything else, guys, that we can talk about that y'all want to plug for Louisiana prospects before we wrap up this week's show?
Good.
All good? Yep.
We're all good. Like, just the loaded schedule. Hey, don't forget, we have our late fall league. Ken mentioned earlier, late fall league, bring your own team, being Gonzales at Carver Park, and then we have our gathering tournament, November 23rd, 24th, to end the year. Looking forward to having some teams from Texas, come there, be Louisiana, Texas, some New Orleans teams, Mississippi. So looking forward to end of the year right.
Nope. Yep. Absolutely, guys. Well, thank y'all for coming on, and we're going to catch up with y'all next week to see how both San Maul and Galvez do in their game. And we'll talk more middle school football, talk more flag football, and we'll talk more high school football as well. This is Jace LeJeune alongside Kenneth and Tony, and we'll see y'all next time on another exciting edition of Ballin In Da Boot.